Welcome to MELfeed.video. We are commencing a live web stream service via youtube.com from Echuca, Australia. We currently conduct these streams on Wednesday evenings with other times to be added as more opportunities arise. Please visit our website at MELfeed.video for further information. This web video project presents old and new community TV programs. Please enjoy your stay with MELfeed.video.
Welcome to NAT Chat. My name is Paul Spanos, and today we have with us Dr. Julie Morcillo, who is community psychologist. Welcome to our program.
Thank you, Paul.
And community psychology, what is it really for the benefit of the viewers? Just give us a bit of an overview.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, psychology is about looking at people's health and mental health, and community psychology, we try and look more from a community perspective, a broader perspective. Right. Rather than just looking only at the individual and what are their problems, we say, well, often there's a community basis to that, and we often do things like working towards community well-being. So we talk about well-being a lot rather than problems a lot.
Okay, that means the mainstream psychology goes to the individual problem.
Yep.
While community psychology focus on the groups.
Yes. And a broader community perspective. Okay.
Yeah. And the effect of the groups, or how the groups been affected by the environment that they live in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And how did you get involved into that sort of field? How did it start for you?
Well, it's interesting. When I went to do some more study, I was looking after children, my own children, plus extra children in my care as a cottage parent. And they suggested I do some study, and I thought, oh, I want to do something really interesting and get into some other work. And I've been interested for a while in psychology, but I was also interested in community work. But the subjects available were psychology, so I went with the psychology. And then after I did psychology, then postgrad at Victoria University, then postgrad at Melbourne University, child and adolescent psychology, I thought, oh, I still love the community stuff. So I did a master's at RMIT in Masters in International Development, so more community work. Then I got invited back to Victoria University, and they said, Heather Gridley, this wonderful community psychologist, said, Julie, I've got just the thing for you. It'll marry your two interests in psychology and community work. It's called community psychology, and you'll do your PhD in that. And so I really loved it, because I got to work with young people, asylum seeker, refugee young people, gay young people, disadvantaged school young people, to do community projects to improve their identity, but as a community psychologist. So you're always doing it in a community perspective rather than more of a clinical individual perspective.
And you already mentioned asylum seekers. You have worked with them, haven't you?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and you specialise on that. And how long have you been involved with asylum seekers?
Well, I've had a few different roles with asylum seekers over the years. When I was studying my PhD, I was teaching psychology. Then I got asked to teach community development. And a whole lot of my students were migrants, and some of them were refugees. So they had been asylum seekers, and they got refugee status from different countries in the world, and it was fantastic. And it was a great mix to have some asylum seekers and some Aussies, because the Aussies are going, wow, we're going to learn so much more from you, because you've got so much more experience from all that you've lived through from different cultures. And the asylum seekers are going, oh, but we don't know much English. And they go, oh, we'll help you with the writing. So the Aussies help them with the writing, and the asylum seekers help give us a much broader perspective on life.
Did you find a problem between the two groups coming together, between the Aussies and the asylum seekers coming from sort of difficult situations? And
no, in fact, I had some students welcome in. I had a couple of them who said, come to my home and we'll help you with the writing, and you can tell me more about your work. And they actually started to look after each other. And I suppose because you're talking about students that already care about others, they already had some compassion. And so they were very open. And some of the students pushed us. Like I had one, she was from Afghanistan, and she was a doctor from Afghanistan. She had to escape because she was going to be in trouble. And she bought her full burqa thing and made me put it on and said, now imagine wearing this, you know, where it even covers your eyes with a bit of net. Imagine wearing this, holding a child, holding your shopping, and in really hot weather, and you're not allowed to wear proper shoes, and you can only go out with a man beside you. And I go, oh, wow, that's amazing.
Every time you go out, you need to be in that dress and everything. And that research in relation to that vulnerable community, the way you're talking about now, is it any interest from, who really funds that sort of work in research?
Well, often there's not a lot of funding available. I mean, there's always some. But when I went to work, after I worked with them in that capacity teaching, I then got more involved in one-on-one counselling because I love narrative therapy and appreciative approaches. And then because I'd worked with some asylum seekers in my research as well, I got asked to take a position at the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre as the counselling coordinator there, and they don't get any funding from government. In fact, in one level they don't want to, because they don't want to be answerable. They want to do it in the best way for the people. And so they get a lot of philanthropic trusts giving them funding, different community groups, and a lot of individuals, and they get support people giving of their time. And so they've got 1,000 volunteers now. When I was working there a few years ago, they had 500. Now it's 1,000.
That means there's a lot of interest from
There's a lot of interest in the community, and we don't hear that in the mainstream media. We get the impression that everyone wants to keep the boats away, and you know, fear that's promoted by our leadership, unfortunately. But people people always have a little bit of fear of the difference, as we know as psychologists. But it's up to the leadership to say, yes, there will be. We're always afraid of the next lot of people that come in, but there's a good side to it too. They bring many skills. Look, we used to be scared of the Vietnamese. We thought they'd bring drugs, and now we love their food.
Absolutely.
And each one that come in, we now love their food and what they contribute.
They definitely contribute.
So.
Yeah, it's okay. Then there is an interest from philanthropic organizations or big organizations that they can really contribute quite a bit. But is there any interest from other business, from the business community? Have you seen any interest at all? Yeah,
we've had businesses that give of their time, give of their energy, actually, you know, do promotion of things for the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre and for other things. And that's a wonderful thing, and give of their time and ask for no recompense for it. And time and energy, and also there's bodies, there's Refugee Council, there's bodies that do lots of research with very little funding, or sometimes they get some funding from government. There's organisations like Red Cross that do wonderful, wonderful work.
And well-known organisations. Yep. We're going to come back and we will talk about specifically the group that you specialised, asylum seekers.
Yes.
Thank you for being with us. Please stay with us. We'll come back shortly.
Every new line means 2 more hands. Join us, lions.org.au.
If you choose to drive on drugs,
you could ruin lives.
Someone else's, your family's, or your own.
Choose not to instead.
The right choice could save someone's life.
Proud supporters of safety in our community.
GMCU and Southern Cross Austereo.
There's a difference between forgetting something once and forgetting it many times. There's a difference between forgetfulness and dementia. Talk to someone who understands. Call the National Dementia Helpline on 1800 100 500.
If a man's home is his castle, his shed is his kingdom. It's a place men can hang out with a few mates, build a few things, even if you haven't before, and give back to the community. No man should be without a shed. The Australian Men's Shed Association is working to provide a shed for all Australian men, and they have over 400 already. Visit your local shed, build your community and make a difference. Find a shed near you. It's time to give back.
Welcome back to NAT Chat, and we're going to continue the discussion of asylum seekers with Dr. Julie Morsillo. And you specialized with the group of asylum seekers, apart from other things we're going to discuss later on. Asylum seekers, if we take that group, what do you think are the main issues in relation, what they face coming to Australia?
Oh, what they face. Asylum seekers often tell me they love their home country so much. They would love to be able to stay with their own people in their own country. But given they have been threatened often, tortured, threatened with death of their family, they've had to escape. And they're very grateful for any country that will take them in and look after them. And they particularly get excited if they arrive in Australia. That's getting harder, but you know, because they find Australian people are so lovely and friendly and outgoing, so they're very happy, relatively speaking. However, they've been through so much, and it must be so hard. And some of them have had their world turned upside down even more than I even imagined. So we know that, you know, people go through war, they go through tough times, or whatever. But the ones that really get to me are particularly some young men. Often now the young men are sent out first by the families because they're the ones most targeted, and then they hope they can bring the rest of their family out later. But some of the young men I've interviewed, for example, some from Pakistan and from Afghanistan and on the border there, where they're treated so badly. But you know why they're treated badly for? Not because they've done what we would regard as wrong, like get into drugs. In fact, I've never come across any that have been in the drug scene, which is interesting in itself. But because they wanted to set up schools for girls. And that is regarded as something wrong. Now, to me, that's turning your world completely upside down, because you're doing something good that we would say is compassionate, social justice. They want to encourage women to have education, not just men. And then they get told by, you know, whoever, Taliban, whoever, no, you cannot do this. This is against what we think is right. And they're targeted. And I think, how do you cope with that, being told that?
What we consider here as basic right. And they get persecuted. And I have heard other stories as well in relation to even the songs they listen to. If it is, it's another well-known song in Iran. It was a happy song, and a group they got persecuted because of that song. And do they belong to specific groups, or is it because of politics or just social justice issues?
Well, sometimes, it's a lot of things, but often it's because they just happen to be born in the wrong ethnic group. So if you happen to be born in Hazari, for example, on the border of near the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan, they're just been persecuted people for a long time. It's kind of like Indigenous people all around the world tend to be more oppressed. The gentle, they're often gentle people who care for their land, like our own Indigenous people and Indigenous people in other cultures. I've come across it over and over. Indigenous peoples, just as a basic tendency, not always, tend to be gentle people who care for the land, but more powerful people come along who want the land, and then they don't like them, so they persecute them. And so we see this happening over and over around the world.
Coming into Australia, entering into this country, of course, we're going to be happy when sort of come into this land in a first instance. They feel safe. But what is it that they carry with them as a community psychologist? What do you think? What is it? Are the things that you need to deal with?
Well, you need to. Well, there's two levels. First, you need to do the practical things with them, and that's what I like about community psychology. We don't just look at the emotional issues, but we say, well, let's also get into the practical and make sure they've got housing, so they've got shelter, make sure they feel safe, make sure they've got food, which is why I loved working at the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre. But also as a counsellor, as a therapist, as a psychologist and a community psychologist, we also need to give them time one-on-one to work through the issues of trauma, because often it leaves them hypervigilant, we call it, which happens with anyone with trauma, but we see it a lot with asylum seekers, and they often end up with post-traumatic stress disorder, just like we're now seeing with our soldiers coming back from places too, because the trauma is so bad. In those traumas, do they have an effect in their health issues here? Yes. And so it has a terrible effect on their mental health. I'm surprised how they can still keep functioning. I think a lot of us, if we'd been through that, we'd be in a corner in fetal position. But they still keep going, and they still manage often to carry some hope with them. They have come from a strong faith background, and that faith gives them hope, or the hope that one day they will see their family again, or often they still have this wonderful thing that they want to give back. So the little that you give them, we give them so little, they are so grateful, they immediately want to give back. So I've had clients that have been so traumatised. One of them, this couple came to me, and the wife, her sister had been burnt to death by the family. But as soon as they got given something by us and given food, they go, oh, we enjoy cooking, and the husband was a fantastic cook. So we would give him a bit of food that he'd been given, because they had no money. So then we're given food, he would go back and cook the most amazing meals and bring them back and share them. So it is really lovely to see that even though they live through trauma, they often, and I think we often get the courageous ones, the ones that are brave enough to try and make the trip away and don't just lie down and say, oh, it's all too hard.
But at least it's a good news when you have the groups within Australia that embracing them instead of, because usually from the media, social media, we hear all the negative things, but a lot of positive work is hidden, isn't it?
Yes. And then when I was the counselling coordinator at the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre, I had people volunteering who could be earning a mint. So I had psychiatrists volunteering their time on Saturday. I mean, they still earn money during the week, but they could be resting on Saturday from all their work during the week. But Saturday mornings, they would take turns to work with asylum seekers for free.
Look at that.
So that was psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, family therapists. We also had health workers, doctors, lawyers, people from all walks of life giving of their time to help their asylum seekers.
Very quickly, how do you feel at the end of helping that sort of group? How do you feel at the end?
It felt good and bad. The good, you felt like, well, at least I can give something back to these people that are so amazing and so gracious and giving and courageous, and I give something back. That was good. The bad part was, in the end, I felt guilty that I was born in Australia. That they didn't ask to be born in a country that was war-torn, and there, by the grace of God, could have been me.
Wow, so, it's a matter of really the reality of justice amongst the human beings, isn't it? Thank you for being with us today. We'll come back with you shortly.
Thank you.
Please stay with us. We'll be back with you shortly.
Hi, I'm Darren McElwain from Air FM Drive. You can tune into my show from 3 to 6 p.m. on 88.0 in Penrith and also on tunein.com. And apparently, we don't throw rocks. Air FM Drive.
We've all seen this one time or another. We may even have done it ourselves. But inhaling balloon gas is very dangerous and can be fatal. The helium in balloon gas acts as an asphyxiant, and when you inhale, it displaces the oxygen in your lungs. Balloon gas is safe in balloons and when you release it in a well-ventilated area and in a safe manner. So the next time you see some sucker about to inhale balloon gas, or you think it's going to be a laugh, stop and be gas-wise.
I was in my 40s when I was first diagnosed with bowel cancer. George, my son, was 6 years old at that time. These days, like people of his age, he's very busy, but he still needs to find the time to get to know his bowel cancer risk. Is that right, George?
Yes, Dad. Bowel cancer affects 1 in 12 Australians, young and old, and is our second biggest cancer killer. But if caught early, bowel cancer is treatable and beatable. My dad is living proof of that. So get to know your bowel cancer risk. Talk to your pharmacist or GP about screening. Protect yourself and the ones you love. Go to lovemyfamily.org.au.
Do you currently have a community service announcement on free-to-air television? If you do, you can now submit it to us as well via our website at MELfeed.video. We have lots of time to fill on these broadcasts, and we are sure to give your announcement a great run on MELfeed.video.
Welcome back, and with us we're going to continue with Dr. Julie Morsillo in a subject of community psychology. Now, community psychology, we did discuss about asylum seekers. What other fields or groups within the community you expand?
Yeah, sure. We work with lots of different groups, particularly those who have suffered in some way, and we're trying to promote more of a community well-being, as well as looking at broader issues like the environment. So we look at environmental issues, we look at Indigenous issues, community well-being within Indigenous communities, communities of different multicultural communities, and the different aspects of that, including, as we've talked about, asylum seekers. Look at issues from all different angles too. So we look at the issue from a policy angle, and we try and influence government policy to have better attitudes and put more resources into helping those most in need, those most oppressed, to help towards liberation and to help towards community well-being.
But you mentioned before about the environment, which is sort of quite hot subject in Australia, inclusive climate change. And all that. I mean, you are involved into that as well.
Yes. Well, I've done little bit of work on it, helping someone else, Dr. Susie Berg, when I worked at the Australian Psychological Society last year and the year before, and the year before that. She's the main one, but I was helping her work on that. And it's working at a few different levels in that, which was really interesting. So looking at climate change issues and what does that mean, and then how do people cope with that, and how do we help them psychologically, and help them think of ways that they can make a contribution. So they can feel better about themselves. So it's what are the issues, teasing out what they are, to do with climate change and overusing our resources, and so there's nothing left for our grandchildren, those kind of issues, as well as looking at effect on psychological issues and disaster management, because climate change is creating more and more cyclones, floods, all that sort of stuff. How do we help people, and how do we help them work through that when they suffer?
All that work and research, do they go to the government hands? Do our politicians know what is happening?
Yes, there are.
From your perspective, because you deal with the real issues and the real problems, I suppose, isn't it?
Yes. So, and we do try and influence government policy. The Australian Psychological Society does write papers, and I used to help do some of those, or help others to do them, to try and change policy, or to get more funding, or specific projects to do more. Or we might develop like a handbook on psychological first aid to help people to work who are working on the direct line, like Australian. We've done some with Australia Red Cross, hand in hand, to come up with a manual together to help people after a disaster. How do you help them? How do we help others to help them?
And when you deal with people or the groups that they are involved into a form of natural disaster or something, what is the approach that you have when you have to face their problems?
Well, we encourage people to we check that people have good supports. So actually we're careful not to let too many psychologists close to them too fast. We actually encourage more social workers first, who will make sure people feel safe, make sure they have their basic needs met, and remind them what support networks they already have, or if they haven't got any, link them in. Then if they're still traumatised, because you don't want psychologists to get too much into too deep too quickly, because sometimes you don't want to re-traumatise them, but you get them, make sure they have good supports. Then later on, if people are still seeming like they are really suffering, or they seem like their mental health is declining because they already may have had some issues and this has triggered more, then you get the psychologist in.
What is
to help them.
You've mentioned to me before in our discussion about that narrative approach.
Yes.
What is that? Can you just elaborate a little bit of that?
Well, that's a personal one that I really like, and as community psychologists often we like that. And in the narrative approach, we do look at more of the community issue as well. So we say, what are your stories, or the stories from your background and your community? And tell us your story of despair or your story of concern. But as we do that, we listen for the alternate story of hope. And sometimes we actually ask about that. So rather than just concentrating only on the problem, which you would in a typical clinical approach to psychology, we also look at the community aspect and say, well, what's happening in the whole community, or how can the community support you? And what are your dreams for the future? So we take a positive, strength-based, appreciative type approach in listening to their story and help them to remember their story of hope. So we help them come to a better place. And often they have many strengths that they've forgotten about while they're feeling all traumatised. And then we remind them, what worked before in the past? Well, actually, I used to do this, and then help them to do it again.
Then
bring out their best.
That means you open up sort of, while they've got the trauma at that moment in their mind, you help them out to widen up the vein and the blood of life just to flow through that, isn't it?
Yes, and help them to remember their own values that are precious to them, that they can use, and those around them to help support them in that.
Have you dealt with human rights?
Yes, I really think that's such a basis for our lives, and I love the way that we've got the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights that we all signed after the Nazi era and said we'd never go there again, which what scares me when I see government doing policies that seem to be operating on fear, whereas the United Nations Human Rights, and us as community psychologists are very big on that we need to promote the human rights and remember that we should be offering freedom to everyone and asylum to everyone and education to everyone, and we should be caring for our asylum seekers, caring for those most in need in our community and offering them human rights, which Australia has done very well in the past. Let's keep doing it.
Amazing. I don't like the time really come to close. But before we close today, could you please share with our viewers about the community TV? How you see the community TV as we are today with NAT Chat and general the community TV in Melbourne?
Well, I think it's great to have community TV because it's by the people, for the people. And you're listening to people who are inspiring or passionate or whatever, concerned about real issues, anything from food to human rights or whatever. And you're sharing that with people without having to, have the big, huge funded projects or whatever. And you're listening to people where they're at, reaching out to people and to show compassion and to show concern and to promote our community.
We're very grateful. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
To our viewers, thank you for being with us today and with Dr. Julie Morsillo. We'll come back next week at the same time.
Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed.video, a different sort of TV.
Welcome to Migration Stories, a special edition of NAT Chat produced by Northern Access TV for Channel 31. And today my guest is Quashani Bard. Hello Quashani.
Thank you for having me, Richard.
Thank you so much for coming in to Channel 31. Now with Migration Stories we want to learn about Australians who've migrated here. And you've come from Zimbabwe.
Yes, I have.
Well, thank you for that. You're making us a richer country.
It's good to be here. It's been both a pleasure and a blessing being here, yes.
Interesting, because the circumstances of you migrating, what perhaps was the first time you heard that you were going to migrate to Australia, or was it just leaving Zimbabwe that your family talked about?
Okay. After I'd done the Year 12 equivalent, my parents were like, well, you know, where do you want to go for university? So I had choice. South Africa was on the list, so was America and the UK, and then there was Australia. Now, the process of elimination was, Mum wasn't happy with me going to South Africa. Dad wanted me in South Africa because that was going to be close to home and he could visit and drop in whenever he liked, as dads do. And I felt like everybody goes to America. I mean, it's on TV. I didn't think it was going to be something new. And the UK was too cold.
Yes, it definitely is, isn't it?
Yeah, and I thought, Australia, the land down under.
What impressions did you have of Australia at that stage? I mean, maybe TV shows or anything else?
Yes, there was TV shows growing up. We had a lot of Australian TV programs.
Series and such?
Yeah, series like Round the Twist. Yeah, that was a big one. Skippy the Bush Kangaroo was one.
Get to see the bush side that way.
Yeah, so we got to see the bush side. Flying Doctors was another. So there was a bit of exposure there. And I remember at home, Dad had like a wall hanging and it had like a map of Australia. And I remember seeing Adelaide and going, oh, that's such a pretty name for a city.
These are the things that impress us anyway.
Yeah,
Get your interest going.
Yeah, so, you know, that was how I came to that decision to come.
Was there not a good university in Zimbabwe, or?
Oh, there was. There was the University of Zimbabwe. But, you know, I was privileged enough to have parents that could afford to send me away.
Yes.
So that's how I came to being here.
Yeah. So you have the extra of studying in another country and in fact migrating here.
Yes, yes, and growing up my parents, especially my father, was huge on education. You know, my dad always used to say the one thing that no man can take from you is an education. You know, they can take your car away, they can take your wife, they can take your property, but an education is up here and you have that for life.
Brilliant.
So yeah, my parents always pushed for a good education.
And how large was your family in Zimbabwe?
I have 3 younger sisters, so I'm the first of 4 girls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And they're still there, or do you think of them coming here, or?
They all came over. So I came to study in 2001 and I was here for about 3.5 years, and then when I finished, Mum came and Mum moved to country Victoria because she got some work there, and then Dad and my sisters came, and then they've been here
How
ever
wonderful.
since. Yeah,
you've got everyone here now.
Yes, yes.
How excellent. Now, which
great.
city or town or were you living in Zimbabwe?
Harare. I was born in Harare.
The capital city. What's that like? Is that really like a metropolis? Or does it have shanty towns around the outside, or how would you compare it to another town that maybe our viewers have seen, know something about?
It's an interesting question. I mean, growing up, and even like in the textbooks when we did geography, we were always told there's like low density areas and there's high density areas.
Yes.
So the low density were less populated and they happen to be closer to the CBD. And as you go out of the city, it's more high density. I guess maybe that would be a way
Yes, that's a very excellent description.
of
Thank
describing
you,
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine what it would be like. And there would be centres outside of Harare as well that are active in certain different industries, would there? Or?
Yes, absolutely. And of course, amongst all that low and high, you've got the industrial areas,
yes,
which for some reason are always closer to the high density areas.
Yes.
I think that's because of, you know, more population, more people for work and stuff. Yeah.
So how long ago was that you did migrate yourself?
2001.
Okay,
June.
so a dozen years ago.
Yeah.
And well, much has changed, I suppose, since you've come here. And do you stay in contact with family there a little bit? And do you have an interest in Zimbabwe?
Always in my
Yes,
heart, you know.
of course.
It's the motherland. It's where I'm from. You never forget. A tree never forgets its roots. So yes, you know, I call Melbourne home, and Melbourne has been very welcoming, but Harare will always be my hometown.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I try to keep in touch with people at home, grandparents.
And a few good buddies and a few family.
Yeah,
well, that's
a few
excellent
family,
because the whole world comes to us here in Australia.
Yeah.
In the next segment, we'll find out what Koshani is up to in Melbourne.
Every time you shop, the choices you make affect our community. It is important to select Australian products made by Aussie-owned companies. Our food security means quality and peace of mind. Your purchasing power keeps your dollars multiplying in our economy, keeping jobs, profits and decisions being made right here, which is better for your children.
So the next time you buy, look for the AusBuy logo. It makes all the difference.
You're there when they can't sleep. You're there when they forget. But who's there when they're at school? Asthma can be serious. It affects 1 in 10 Australians and claims 400 lives each year. Does anyone at your school know what to do in an asthma emergency? Log on to asthmafriendlyschools.org.au and find out if your school is asthma friendly. Shouldn't every school be asthma friendly?
To every child's development, an important message from the Australian Toy Association.
Hi, I'm Lane Beachley. Australians have recycled enough printer cartridges to cover Bondi Beach 12 times. That's kept 11,000 tonnes of valuable resources out of landfill. Drop your used original cartridges into the special boxes at participating retail outlets, and they'll be turned into new products from pens to road surfaces. Help us keep up the good work. Find out more at cartridges.planetark.org.
Welcome back to NAT Chat, our special edition, Migration Stories, and today migrated from Zimbabwe about a dozen years ago, Koshani. And what are you up to in Melbourne these days?
What am I up to in Melbourne?
Well, you've graduated?
Yes, I long since graduated. It's another...
What was your qualification? What was your area that you went for?
Yes, I studied at Deakin and I did a Bachelor's of Commerce.
Wow.
I majored in financial planning and marketing, and then I did my honours in advertising.
Honours?
Yeah.
Wow, that's better than me and everyone here. And you got some work in that area?
Yes, I worked in advertising for a couple of years and then financial administration. Yeah.
Well, it's a very good skill to have. You can transfer to very many areas, and promotion and things like that.
Yes.
And what extracurricular activities do you enjoy? Other things that you do other than your work and study?
Other things that I do, well...
You've got a fashion sense, I
yes,
can see.
Yes, there is a fashion sense. So I'm a singer-songwriter. I've coined a little something I call reggae. So it's like reggae and blues with a touch of soul on an acoustic tip and sometimes on a dancehall tip.
Music style with those elements all mixed in.
Yes.
Well, our viewers will be very curious to hear about it. So what's your performing group, or what's your name of your performing troupe?
Well, solo, it's Kwashani Bard. That is what I use for the music. And for the fashion stuff, it's House of Boho Chic. So I make signature style ear discs using Afro batik materials or felts, like the one that I'm wearing now.
Wow.
With
so
feathers.
You've made that,
yes, yeah.
that earring, yes?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
And the insides are recycled materials, so I'm also, you know, doing my bit for the environment.
Okay.
Hand-painted zebra signature style dresses, yeah, tassels, hoops, the work.
And are there organisations involved in, you know, helping you market that, or is it kind of like you go to a market or something?
I've done markets and I've done something called Raw, which was a fantastic opportunity. So it's all these different artists come under the one roof and they showcase their art. So we're talking singers, songwriters, performers like dance, makeup artists, hair, photographers,
Raw,
and accessories
a group
designer.
called Raw, did you say?
Yeah, an organisation called Raw.
What do they do?
They get all these different talents under the one roof and they help them showcase their art form. Yeah, so I did that in September.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
And where are they located? What suburb? Or they're everywhere, are they?
Well, it originally started in America and they've brought the idea here. And the one they had in September was the first one in Melbourne, but the first one officially in Australia was Brisbane.
So anyway, you're thriving with them helping and all those groups together.
Yeah. But you know, a solo artist can never get too much help.
Yes, also the singing as well as the fashion.
Yeah.
Any success so far? I mean, have you won any contests or?
Successes, it's been a pretty interesting year. I entered into something called Africa's Got Talent earlier this year that ran in May. So it was on the 25th of May and it was part of the Melbourne Africa Day festivities, which stretched across a week.
So we have Africa's Got Talent here in Melbourne.
Yes, Africa's Got Talent in Melbourne because there is talent from Africa in Melbourne.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so that was a fantastic opportunity. I had the pleasure of being one of 10 finalists that got to sing. And they had 4 judges on the panel, you know, Denny Hines, Simon Rayner, Blair Stafford, and Chris from Northside Records.
Okay.
So yeah, that was a thrill.
Very substantial movers and shakers of the music industry.
Yes.
So you did well in that?
Yes, I did well in that.
And I guess what's happening with your, you know, home life and your day-to-day activities and networking and getting into community? What's happening there in your life here in Melbourne? Is it a welcoming place for your spread of activities in Melbourne?
Oh, wow. It's been such a blessing, Richard. I've had such really good opportunities as we speak. My creations are at the Frankston Arts Centre. So yeah, you know, that's yet another great opportunity spanning from the 11th of November to the 11th of January, so people that cruise through can check out the art and can buy stuff. Because one of the things that the boho chic is known for is fascinators, so I make fascinators.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so there's that opportunity.
I'm sure we'll see you at the Melbourne Cup, or at least the fascinators there.
Isn't that the dream? Isn't that the dream?
It's our dream.
Yeah.
What else do you like about Australia? I mean, something along the lines of, is it the beaches or is it the bush? And you know, you mentioned your mother lives in regional Victoria.
Well, she used to.
What's the natural side of things that you like here?
The natural side of things, you know, I love the idea of the beach. I don't get down there much. But what I really like about Melbourne is the fact that it's such a multicultural pot.
Okay.
And a lot of inspiration comes from that.
Yes.
Yeah. That's one of the things I love
We're very
about
lucky
Melbourne.
with our centres, and Footscray and you know, the Thornbury Northcote areas and the St Kilda areas, and it's spreading right throughout.
Yeah.
Well, we'll come back for another segment and maybe look into the future and what you can help us with in this country, some ideas, fresh ideas that you might have brought to us.
Okay.
Please come back soon.
Each week, MELfeed.video presents the CEC Report. The Citizens Electoral Council of Australia present a weekly program of political and economic analysis with policy solutions which are aimed at saving Australia from economic collapse and also suggest ways in which interested members of the public can assist in their current campaigns. The CEC Report every Monday at 10:30 p.m. on MELfeed.video.
I want to get the word out to blokes about a little gland called the prostate. It's only the size of a walnut, but it can cause a whole lot of grief. Prostate cancer deaths pretty much equal breast cancer deaths. The problem is, if you wait too long, it may be too late. It took one of my mates. Don't make me angry. Talk to your doctor about your prostate, and if necessary, get it checked. You'd be nuts to leave it to chance.
What I love about Australia is Adelaide Central Market. It's where I grew up, hanging out with Mum and great Auntie Kim. I see a lot of migrants buying ingredients that they need to cook dishes that remind them of their culture. And I think that's why food is such a powerful thing when it comes to people understanding each other. On Australia Day, I'm going to come to the market, buy some beautiful produce, take it home, crank out the pizza oven and have a little pool party with my mates.
Get together on Australia Day. Go to australiaday.org.au to find out how.
Man to man, it's time to stop.
Stop the tragic waste of life and the destruction of families, including your own.
Stop blaming drugs and alcohol and believing that walking away makes you weak.
Stop thinking you're a hero and wasting your life behind bars, wishing you could take that one moment back.
Stop the coward's punch.
Welcome back. I'm here with Kwashani Bard, who's migrated here from Zimbabwe. So, what do you think Australia should do? What's the future that you see for Australia?
Wow.
What's our position in the world? What should we do?
What's the future? I guess I'd just narrow it down to just the music scene, really. We've got so much talent here in Melbourne. It'd be great if we could be getting more of that out, you know?
Indeed, around the world, with all the different styles that can be here.
Yes, and that's really going to be truly reflective of Melbourne as we know it.
So kind of showing the rest of the world what Melbourne is.
Yeah.
Through the music.
A showcase through the music, yeah. Yeah.
And that would be a huge potential, I suppose.
I'd say it'd be a huge potential and a great opportunity, not only for the artists, but even for, you know, from a tourism perspective for Melbourne as a city.
People always say Australia and Melbourne so far away, but it could be well worth coming then, hey?
It would be.
And any room for any more festivals, do you think, in this great country?
Yeah, absolutely. I reckon we need more, reggae dance hall festivals.
Indeed.
Yeah, I don't know that we have any now, that we don't have Ragamuffin.
No.
Yeah.
No, there isn't really a current big festival. There is the Blues Festival in Byron Bay Blues Festival.
Yeah.
And there's the Queenscliff Festival, which you could also call a Roots Festival. So many Roots festivals, but not enough reggae.
Yeah, not enough reggae. We need more of that reggae.
Maybe up in Cairns, I think Trop Fest. It's got a fair amount of reggae in it.
Cool. Yeah, I hadn't heard of that one.
And so how is it you've become such a fan of reggae in Zimbabwe? Is it also a rich music scene in Zimbabwe?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know I'm very passionate about reggae, but I'm passionate about music in general. So growing up, my dad had lots of music. I'm talking, we go all the way from, trying to pull some names, Deep Purple, ZZ Top, Jimi Hendrix. He had Bob Marley in there. Just the Commodores. There was lots of music. But I guess we could say I fell in love with reggae when I was 15. I went to boarding school, and every Friday, last Friday of the month rather, they had a dance. So we'd go and we'd listen to reggae and dance hall, and that was the one day of the month that you knew you were really going to have like a really good time,
Oh, I see.
And that's how I came into reggae and dance hall, and since then I've just been,
So it's a kind of music that comes with a culture as well, and culture of dancing and sort of a soft feel to the, sort of a gentle feel at those clubs, hey?
Yes.
You can stand in the corner in the dark, or you can get up and dance. Is that what appealed to you so much, hey?
Yeah, well, the rhythm of it, reggae is very sort of slow, sort of tip, and then dancehall is more upbeat. And I'm really into the dancing.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
And you're doing toasting as well? Or?
Yes, I'm doing some toasting too. I perform around, Melbourne clubs. I've worked with such, selectors as Jessie I, who runs the Babylon Burning radio show.
A legendary
PBS.
show on
Yes, legendary. So
sister radio station 3PBS.
Yes, that's right. So he has a night called More Fire under his banner, Chant Down Sound, and I've performed at that. He also does dance hall.
When is that on? Did you say Friday? Is it a regular thing?
More Fire is second Saturday of every month.
We need to know this.
At the Meerkat Cross Hotel.
Okay.
Yes.
Near the market.
Yes, near the market. And other selectors, like Sister Itations, who does Pressure Drop at the Laundry. And that's second Saturdays, second month. Rather, so it's once every 2 months that she does that.
Okay.
So yeah, I've been doing a lot of that sound system stuff, but every now and then I like to break it up because I also do like acoustic stuff. So I've performed at, such events as Sisters for Sisters at the Toff in Town.
Oh, really? I remember that day. I went to that show. It was last year, yes?
Yes. Well, they've had like 7 episodes since it started.
So much women talent there.
Yes. So, yeah, that started up in 2011, and that's just been rolling on since.
So it's a rich environment for your music career.
Yes.
And what about travelling markets with the jewellery and the fashion?
I've done a few markets. I guess I'm still kind of warming up to the markets, but mostly I just sell online, so I've got an online space there, and your typical Facebook page, and these days it's all sort of connected, so I've got a shopping cart on my Facebook page.
Oh, wow.
That links to the store, so...
It's very technical.
Yeah,
very advanced.
Yeah, so...
Well, congratulations on all of that.
Thank you, Richard.
Now, what's a kind of a family you're all living in the same area, or you've now spread around a bit, hey?
No, I live in Kensington and my parents live on the other side of town.
So what happens? Is there a regular sort of reunion? I remember when my background's Maltese, we came from Europe and we used to have family reunions on the beach. Is there anything like that happening in your family?
Oh yeah, we love our food.
Okay.
So typically if we've got like a birthday or something, we all just kind of go to mum's house or my sister's house and everybody brings a dish. So, you know, for instance, you know, maybe dad's doing the rice and I'm doing the meat, mum's doing the salads, my other sister's doing the vegetables, and my other sister's doing the cocktail. Okay. So by the end of the session, it's like you've had a bit of everything and everybody's had a hand in everything, and it's really special times.
Yes.
We just don't get to do it enough.
So it's not a regular, but it's occasional?
We try to do it at least once a month.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Has the dishes developed a little bit, being, you know, any Australian influence, or?
Yeah. It's very contemporary.
Okay.
Kind of a fusion.
Oh.
Because, you know, when I think traditional food as I know it, the staple in Zimbabwe is sadza, which is maize meal.
Oh, okay.
Very similar to your polenta, and we eat
Yes.
that as a very sort of thick porridge.
Yes.
And we eat that with vegetables and like leafy greens and meat. But that's traditional. So contemporary could be, you know, using other non-sort of traditional spices and herbs in there.
Throw in a bit of Australian steak or something.
Yeah, jazz it up.
Well, Koshani, thank you very much for coming to Northern Access TV studios.
Thank you so much for
today's
having me. Thank
edition
you so
of
much.
Migration Story. It's been
Thank
wonderful
you.
finding out about your story.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, kind viewers. Please tune in again next week.
I'm able to dream, I'm able to smile, I'm able to grow, and I'll go the extra mile, one day at a time. So put your hands together, we can change lives forever. Together, we're able.
Able Australia. Together, we're able.
Transports of Distant Delight is a mixed selection of transportation pictures from here and there and almost everywhere, but not quite. Some quirky, some mundane, some from the past, perhaps reflecting a transit system that has vanished into history, and some from thriving transport entities that continue to endure despite the constant pressures from the all-pervasive motor car. Enjoy. Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed.video, a different sort of TV.
Alleluia. Om Mani Padme. Om Allah.
Welcome to Harmony and Diversity. Norm Curry is my name, and my guest today is Peter Westmore, who's the National President of the National Civic Council. Thank you very much, Peter.
Very good to be here, Norm.
We'll do the format that we do, and this first session will be actually about who is Peter Westmore and how has he evolved spiritually before becoming active in the National Civic Council. So can I ask you in the first instance, you're obviously Catholic, what was your process of becoming Catholic?
Yes, well, I was born a Catholic, so in a large family, and my dad was a doctor in Brunswick, a GP in Brunswick, a solo practice, and I was very fortunate, therefore, to grow up in a community which had both what I'd call sort of old Australians, and particularly from the 1950s onwards, sort of a lot of new Australians coming in. There were Italians and Greeks, and later on people from Turkey and other countries. So it was a very interesting environment in which to grow up, and one in which, as I went through school, I came in contact with a lot of people who had come from different cultures from my own. And I've often looked back on that and thought to myself just how fortunate I was to have met people who came from different backgrounds from myself, even different socio-economic backgrounds, and to see how much we had in common with each other. And one of the things I think which is, in a sense, much later in my life driven me has been this sense that all of us, doesn't matter which religion we're from or what our social background is or what country we came from. We're here in this country, and we've all want to make it as good a country as we can. And I've always had this very strong sense that everybody who's in this country should be welcomed and should be seen as being asked and invited to contribute to making Australia a better place. And that's what our organisation's also about.
That's very interesting. I'd say that you could say that culturally you were introduced to a small C Catholic all the way through from that background.
Yes, yeah.
So where were you educated?
Well, my first school was at Parade Preparatory School, which was a Christian Brothers school. And then my parents took me away from there and sent me to Moreland High School. And after I was at Moreland High, I then went back to a Christian Brothers school. It was a scholarship school. And then after that, I went to St Kevin's College, which is one of actually my dad's old school before he went on to university himself. So I had the benefit of a very good education. And I think I was never conscious of having, in a sense, a sort of a social vocation, but when I look back, I was very fortunate to have had the upbringing that I did, and to have the sense that, you know, we're not in this world just for our own enrichment or whatever. We're actually here to make as good a contribution as we can to ourselves, our families, and our society as well.
How did you find the interlude in the Moreland High School? That's sandwiched in between.
It was very interesting because having been to a Catholic school in my primary schooling, I had thought that Moreland High School would be basically a place where there was no place for religion at all. And I came to when I was there, I actually found that that Moreland High School, certainly at that stage, was a very good school, and it had there were quite a number of people who were Catholic on the teaching staff of the school at the time.
Yes.
And that they were concerned with simply providing people with a very good education. Didn't have the religious component, but at Moreland High School there was respect for people who had religious convictions. So I thought this was actually, for me, a wonderful eye-opener, that I saw that even though they didn't have a commitment to a religion or a religious principle in terms of the running of the school, there was respect for people who had religious beliefs. And I didn't ever feel when I was there that I was unwelcome or whatever. In fact, probably 20% of the people at Moreland High School at that stage were Catholics, for all I knew.
Yes.
So,
and that then rolled over. So when you went to St Kevin's, that was your higher education?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
And what did you study there? What was
I studied up until year 10. I studied the full range of subjects. There were really very few choices at that point. But in years 11 and 12, I did maths and sciences predominantly. I did Latin actually up till year 11, and I did British history up until year 11. In fact, I won the British History Prize at school.
Well, congratulations.
Actually, in that year, in year 11, when I won that prize, my elder brother, who's a urologist in Melbourne, he was dux of the school. I was dux of year 11, and my younger brother Michael was the dux of year 10. So we acquired a reputation there at the school, which occasionally I run into some of my old classmates, which they still remind me of, and I am somewhat embarrassed by that.
Oh, but it's a good thing to be embarrassed.
Well, except one doesn't like to stand out from the crowd as much as that. No, to be remembered now 50 years later for the family that you belong to. But it was a very good school, and I just got a very good grounding on in the subjects that I was doing. But in those days you had to choose near the end of secondary schooling whether you were going into the sciences or the humanities. And I think it was too narrow actually.
And we'll need to choose something at the moment because we need to go to a break. Yep. We'll go to a break and look forward to speaking to you soon.
1 in 5 of us are affected.
10% of us will have at least one.
And the numbers double for Indigenous Australians.
Just as quick as a click of your fingers, it can happen to anyone at any time.
What would you do if someone close to you was having a seizure?
Imagine if it was your child.
My brother has it. My sister has it.
I have it.
I have it too.
You're not alone.
You're not different.
And you have a bright future ahead of you.
So click for kids!
I'm Amy Lee, and I'm part of it.
Behind every great athlete, there is a great support network. Australian Athletes with a Disability and Wheelchair Sports Australia help athletes realise their full potential.
Gonna go from 3, yes!
No matter their ability, we're there to support them. Sporting opportunities for all abilities. For more information, visit sports.org.au.
This bank is helping to save lives. Every year, 500,000 Victorians have no idea where their next meal is coming from. Food Bank Victoria works with farmers, supermarkets and manufacturers to make sure their surplus stock ends up here, to be distributed to those in need. But all of this is not enough. Right now, this bank needs interest, your interest, to support Victorians in need. If you can help, visit foodbankvictoria.org.au.
Most of us experience life's ups and downs, but we can always appreciate the finer details that make life worth living. But for 1 in 5 of us, mental illness can make us lose sight of the big picture. That's when Paran Mission can lend a helping hand. We've been caring for the community for over 60 years, finding a place for people with no place. Show your support and stand up for mental illness. Visit our website and make a donation today.
Hallelujah. Mani
Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity. And my guest today is Peter Westmore, who's the National President of the National Civic Council. And Peter, we've been tracing your history through your schooling, and you've reached St Kevin's, and you did pretty well with your ducks of that history. Year 11, wasn't it? You were ducks off. Yes, yeah. Absolutely. What happened then?
Well, I finished Year 12 and I wanted to do aeronautical engineering, but there wasn't a faculty, a department rather, of aeronautical engineering at Melbourne University. So I went to Melbourne and spent 2 years just in the common engineering course, which was available then, and transferred to Sydney University in my 3rd year. Now, I wasn't a brilliant student at university. I did reasonably well, but not a brilliant student. And it was really, in a sense, only when I went to Sydney, I think, when, for the first time in my life, when I was away from home and probably looking for new friends and all of that, that I really became involved in what ultimately became my life's work, and that is I became involved in sort of student politics at the time. Okay. And that was, I think, probably mainly a consequence of being away from home, that I needed to find friends. And I was very concerned at the time as to what was happening at the university. It was a time of mass protests, what an American professor, John Searle, described as the campus wars. And I'd already done 2 years, so I had a handle on what university life was all about. I was very, very concerned with what was happening at the university, what was being published in student newspapers, which I very strongly disagreed with. And I looked around to the question and to say, am I the only one who thinks this way? And I found that there were a group of young students there who thought the same way as I did, and they happened to be connected with the National Civic Council. They ran a university club called the Democratic Club, which I joined, and then I was invited to a meeting at the National Civic Council, which I went to, at which we collectively sort of discussed not just university matters, but more broadly what was happening in society. And again, I found that the people who were there, who were, if you like, followers of the famous Bob Santamaria, who was a national public figure in Australia at the time, I realised that these people were concerned not just about what was happening at the university campus, but what was happening in the broader society. And I found when I met them that actually I thought, these are matters which I'm concerned about as well. So I was drawn gradually into an association with the National Civic Council through my involvement at Sydney University.
What were just briefly, the key stumbling blocks that you struck at university, which made you say, well, these views are troubling me? What were they at that time?
Well, the thing that affronted me most of all was, this was the time when Australia was involved in the Vietnam War, and I was, of course, a university student, so my number was in the lottery which was to come up. And I had taken the view that if my number came out of in the draw, that I would simply go in and do my 2 years of national service, and then I'd resume my university life. But there were many people at the university who were utterly and completely opposed to conscription or national service, and who were utterly and completely opposed to Australia being involved in any way in the Vietnam War. And many of the same people were people who were controlling the student newspaper and pouring relentless pro-Viet Cong propaganda down the throats of students like myself. And I resented the fact that these people were as influential as they were when they didn't reflect my views, and I knew the views of a lot of other students. So I wanted to try to do something about that. Now, that's on the, if you like, the political front.
Yes.
But at the same time, there was also things happening to me internally, because I'd grown up as a Catholic, and, you know, I went to Mass every Sunday, but that was the limit of my religious sort of involvement. But partly because of the people with whom I was mixing, who tended to be sort of strongly Christian, but also what was happening in society at the time. This was a time when there was a move away from organised religion entirely, and there was a very strong move in society towards, if you like, a counterculture. There was the period of sort of the sexual revolution, flower power. A lot of these things were all floating around. You know, not just sort of bell-bottom trousers and all of that sort of stuff, but there was a cultural move going on in the broader society, which I was well aware of. There was also the growth of the drug culture, certainly at the university. And when I was on the Students' Representative Council, I mean, you'd walk into meetings sort of through a haze of marijuana smoke and all of that sort of stuff. So I was really well aware of all of that. But interestingly, probably because of the exposure that I'd had to it and my background, I actually reacted very negatively to all of that sort of stuff.
Yes.
So I responded to all of these new movements in society and so on by, in a sense, becoming more strongly attached to the value system which I'd been brought up with. Now, I had to make a decision, and I was conscious of that, but I thought, this is the road to destruction. If it is not the road to personal destruction, it is the road to destruction of the university or of society. And I didn't want to have any part of that. So, again, probably influenced by the people with whom I was associated, I actually came to, my ideas were clarified by all of the things that were going on, and actually became stronger in my commitment to my to patriotism for our country, the importance of being patriotic, but also to my religious faith. And it was a time also of turmoil inside the Christian churches, including of the Catholic Church at that time. We had, I think the Pope at the time brought forward a statement which aroused enormous controversy on contraception, which you may be aware of, but which certainly was one, again, there were convulsions within the Christian community and certainly within the Catholic community, which up till that time people had thought was monolithic.
Yes.
And it really showed that that was not true, that the broader cultural trends were influencing the churches quite profoundly. And I think that's continued to the present day.
Yes, and that's a very great summation of what was happening in those times, to my recollection. We'll go to a break, thank you, Peter. We'll be back shortly with this fascinating topic.
Joy, well-being, community, inclusion.
Special Olympics is a global movement for people with an intellectual disability, creating a world of inclusion and community through sport, where every person is accepted and welcomed, regardless of ability. One athlete, one volunteer, one family member at a time, helping to make the world a better place. Join the inclusion revolution by supporting Special Olympics.
and choose to include.
I had the boys over for a barbecue the day before our final. Anyway, Steve rocks up, no beer, and he brought his model girlfriend. He was showing off, going on about how he kicked the winning goal in the semis, you know. I must have gotten a bit distracted and I put his steak on the same plate the raw meat had been on. Anyway, we lost the final. Steve had to go off sick during the game. I mean, it's not my fault. I mean, who brings their girlfriend to a bloke's barbie anyway?
Behind your favourite team, there's another team. At all levels, in all codes, sports trainers are working to make sport safer. Sports trainers learn injury prevention techniques from doctors and other health professionals so they can provide the right first aid when the going gets tough. If your team could do with a sports trainer, maybe it's time you got a little closer to the action. Find out how you can become a sports trainer. Sports Medicine Australia, providing the team behind the team.
If you were living on the streets, wouldn't you want more than just your best friend to keep you safe, warm and dry? Donate to Backpack Bed for Homeless and give warm, waterproof protection and dignity tonight. Call 1300 OzHelp.
Hallelujah. Mani Pa.
Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and my guest today is Peter Westmore, who's the National President of the National Civic Council. And Peter, you've given us a very interesting summation, and you're in the university, your views have been consolidated by the political activities in the 60s and 70s, and now out you come, connected to the NCC, recommitted, if you needed to be, to your faith.
Yes.
What happened then?
Well, it was a logical progression. I finished a Master of Engineering Science, and I was asked by Bob Santamaria whether I would work for the organisation. Now you have to keep in mind, I had 2 degrees in engineering, and I didn't really want to do this work. But I thought about it, and I thought, there are plenty of people around who are going to be as good engineers as I am, but there are actually very few people who will do the work that he wanted me to do, which was to help to build the university groups which I'd been involved with right throughout New South Wales. And so I said, I'll give you 2 years. And here I am now, roughly 40 years later, still doing the same work that I said I'd spend 2 years on. So it was really, I went to work for the National Civic Council, and in 1976, Bob Santamaria asked me to move from Sydney, where I had been working in our office in Sydney, down to our national office in Melbourne to work as a researcher for him. And I worked as a researcher for him for a number of years. Then I became National Secretary of the NCC, and when he passed away in 1999, I became National President of the NCC, and I've held that position since then.
So you could be truly described as an activist in that context.
Yes, that's right.
And what sort of changes have you seen, like in the 70s, the NCC in the 70s, and the NCC today, of which you're the National President?
Yes.
What sort of changes would you describe as having taken place?
Well, in the 1970s, the focus of our work was, firstly, a good deal of it was the work that the organisation originally had been involved with, which was a battle inside the trade union movement to support basically moderate or anti-communist sort of unionists. And that battle was taking place in many unions around Australia. I became involved because of what was happening at the universities, and that was an expansion of the works of the NCC that happened in the 1960s. But separately, there were a whole series of other things happening in society which were of concern to Bob Santamaria and his colleagues, and among them were the problems which arose from the rise of the radical feminist movement, which had quite a different agenda for how Australia and the role of women in society, which had an influence upon the National Civic Council in terms of the works that we were involved with. There was the growth of the problems of family breakdown in society, and certainly it was Bob Santamaria's very strong view that we needed to support the family as the fundamental social unit in society, not simply to leave families to manage as best they can, and then if there's a breakdown we try to help to pick up the pieces. Right. Try to hold families together. And on top of that, there were also major developments in the financial community within Australia. We had the very strong push towards financial deregulation in Australia. We had the sell-off of what had previously government-owned utilities in Victoria, for example, the electricity system, the power stations, the tramways, the railways had been privatised. And these were new issues of public policy which ultimately affected ordinary Australians. And yes, they were new areas in which the National Civic Council felt it should take up a position. And then on top of that, we had, if you like, the further development of what had begun in the 60s with this cultural revolution, where religion was in decline in Australian society. And we also had the rise of two things. One of them was what an American theologian called, I think very pertinently, he called the atheism of distraction.
And I'm going to have to introduce the atheism of time. We're going to speak next session about the NCC in great detail, and thank you very much, Peter. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om, Allahu
Here is some brilliant news for adults who have difficulties with spelling, reading a newspaper or phone bill, or writing letters and emails. It can be easier to improve your reading and writing skills than to keep putting it off. Take the plunge. Call the Reading Writing Hotline, 1300 655 06.
1300 655 06.
It could change your life.
Had enough of the bad news about carbon dioxide and climate change? Wood is one solution. Trees take CO2 from the air and store it in their wood. They're also renewable, unlike concrete and steel. But the wood you choose should be recycled or from certified plantations or forests. This helps protect areas of high conservation value. So next time you're building or buying something, make it wood and do your world some good.
Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed.video, a different sort of TV.
Had enough of the bad news about dioxide and climate change? Wood is one solution. Trees.
This is called prayer. Oh, God, not another red light. I'll walk past now, come back later. Please, God, let that not be my wife over there. Please, God, let it be someone else. But someone who only looks like my wife, nothing else, only looks like my wife. But no, God, not like my wife. Oh, no, for God's sake, I wouldn't wish that on another living soul. God knows life is hard enough. I am supposed to be at a parish church meeting, planning the next assault on the parishioners' purses, and not as I am now with her sister. Oh, there's now glory be to God, wearing the lowest of the lowest plunging necklines. Oh dear St. Peter, patron saint of fishermen and pool divers and pool plungers, bless my pool diving and pool plunging and bodice be fumbling for evermore. Oh, may my deep fathom plunging be ever fruitful and joyous. Surely her bosoms all a plunging would be an answered prayer for any poor love-deprived Franciscan friar, or even for any love-deprived Trappist trier, and a trier of a friar I will be, if my wife catches me with her sister who is now displaying so gloriously. Oh, Hosanna in the highest, whoever most delicious dumplings, all a dumpling and a dumpling I will go. Oh God, yes, and in a tightest of tightest, butt clinging skirty skirt. Oh dear God, I am blessed indeed. Thank you, Lord. And in a shortest of skirty skirts. You can leave that, darling. I will pick it up for you. And in the dearest, the littlest, the reddest of skirties. Dear God, hear my prayer. I pray that my wife would believe that I was going with her sister to visit a mutual friend in hospital. Why, oh why, dear God, do I not behave? Heaven knows, I have tried to behave. If only, Lord, you would give me the answer to my question, why do I not behave? Please, God, but dear God, there is no hurry for an answer to that question. Why I do not behave? No, God, no hurry at all, dear God. I do not require that answer right away. No, not right away. You can hold on to that for a bit, dear God. In your wisdom, you will choose when to deliver that answer. Please, God, if you wish, you can take your time on that one. How about on a Sunday, if you please, God? A Sunday too far away. Next year after, a Sunday, say, when I'm down with something or somebody. A body like Prue Thompson's, perhaps. Yes, Prue Thompson's body would be fine. Just something to keep body and soul well apart. Dear God, I would ever be so grateful if you would answer that prayer. Just let Prue Thompson drop in one Sunday after Mass when the wife has gone to put flowers on her mother's grave. I have long prayed for that day when my wife would be able to put flowers on her mother's grave. For my answered prayer, dear God, I thank you. Oh, God, no, tell me I didn't leave that letter from Mandy Miller on the kitchen table. What in the name of heaven was I thinking? Yes, I was thinking of the burning toast when the phone rang and I tripped over the cat. I will just have to start praying. Who to? Whoever might be home, I suppose. Hello, dear. Oh, fancy meeting you here. Have you met your sister? Of course you have. Grew up together, shared parents, shared address and so on. Silly me. Now, listen, you guys. I thought you might go for a dumpling. Go for a drive down to the to the Braybrook Hotel. God, what's got into me? Praying for rain? Yes, I have been praying for rain as well. Mandy Miller? Who is Mandy Miller? Do I know Mandy Miller? God, no, the Mandy Miller who wants to go strolling along the Sorrento beach next Sunday. A la natural. Really? Oh, God, that Mandy Miller. On medication. Not meditation. Medication. It's a form of meditation. Medication, you know, poor girl. Imagine things. Heaven only knows where she gets her notions from. I pray for her. Coming good, though. I hear, dear girl, thank God, went through a bit of a phase. Imagine she was in love with me. Lord forbid. Hard to imagine, I know. Oh, well, not that hard to imagine. No, not all that hard to imagine. You were going on the letter you found on the kitchen table, my sweet. Good heavens. There you go. Oh, when do I go? Oh, tonight? Oh, that soon? God, that is soon. Cast out without a song or a prayer. There we are, that's that one. Well,
If I were a car, no one would buy me, no one with discretion anyway. My tyres are bald and my engine is slow, and my vroom has vanished clean away. If I were a football, I'd be forgotten, left under the bed to rot. My laces are loose and my tongue's hanging out, and my bladder is deflated a real lot. If I wear a pair of boots, you'd disown me. My heels are worn low and they're shot. My arches are falling, my toes are worn through, and do I look good? I do not. If I was a raincoat, I'd be in a dark wardrobe. The days surfing my best are well gone. My veneer is quite thin, my protection is low, and frankly, I'm better off home. But if I were a pair of slippers, I'd be so loved, all battered and worn on the ground, but comfy and warm and inviting. Oh boy, would you love having me round. So don't judge me just by my appearance. I'm a well-worn old trooper, you see. With years of good service and caring, you'll do well to have friends such as me.
Put out the light. Being of some reference to Shakespeare's married couple, Othello and Desdemona. Once again, you've got two voices. Desi or Desdemona speaks first. Tally, did you put out the light when I said put out the light? No, Desi, I thought when you said put out the light that you would then put out the light. Why, Tally, would I tell you to put out the light and then put out the light? Desi, is this night to be, the night? What do you mean, Tally, when you say, is this night, Desi, to be, the night? You know, Desi, what I mean when I say, Desi, is this night to be, the night? If you put out the light, Tally, this night could be, the night. I will go down now, Desi, and put out the light. Make sure, Tally, you put out the cat when you put out the light. Yes, Desi, I will put out the cat when I put out the light. Tally, what was that noise? Have you put out the cat and put out the light? Yes, Desi, but when I put out the light, and then when I stood on the cat, after I put out the light, I then stood on the broom. After I stood on the cat, after I put out the light. So, Desi, the broom has now, put out my light. Not tonight now, Desi. Sorry. Good night.
It's easy for things to go wrong around water. More so if you can't swim.
It's great seeing kids confident in the water and enjoying themselves. An important part of keeping kids safer around water is learning to swim.
There are over 600 registered swimming schools that run the Australian Unity Learn to Swim program. To find one, go to the Swim Australia website.
Every minute.
Every hour.
Every mother and father.
Every sister and brother.
Every son and every daughter.
Everyone you see.
Everyone you cheer.
Everyone you watch.
And everyone you hear.
Everyone you meet.
Everyone you know.
Everyone you love.
Everyone is affected.
Reach out and get connected.
You teach us strangers are dangerous. But someone we know is a much more likely threat. You teach us strangers are dangerous. But who will help when you're not around? Create a world without unnecessary fear. Prepare, don't scare.
Come on, fellas. Let's get down there.
Hang on. Where's Dave?
Oh, hey, fellas. What do you think? Pretty cool, eh?
Real men look out for each other. Don't let your mates drink and drown.
One single drop of sweat rolls down her thigh. Yes, I'm not looking at anyone particularly. Yes, I will be with you, my love, as soon as I have finished this piece for the magazine. It must be in tomorrow. No, I'll not be long. You just have yourself undressed and... Oh, you have yourself undressed already, all right. Yes. By God, they are large. I wonder... Yes. Now, where was I? Yes. One single drop of sweat rolls down her thigh. All right, all right. Be patient, my dear. Oh, God. The woman is never satisfied. What is it with her? That's the last thing I want at the moment. I have to have this piece finished for tomorrow's deadline. Now, one single drop rolls down her thigh. Her thighs cross as her toes curl in ecstatic anticipation. My love's thighs are rather large too, but they are certainly not crossed. No, far from it. Right now, one single drop. Yes, dear, I won't be long. I'm thinking that this piece could end up as a murder mystery. Coming soon, my love. Not lying now. Keep warm, my pet. As if I need to tell her that. Again, where was I? One single drop of sweat rolls down her thigh. Her thighs cross as her toes curl in ecstatic anticipation. She lays with arms and legs outstretched on the bed. He creeps towards her. The beach towel, a present from her mother, twisted tightly like a rope in his hands. Her eyes stare at him in horror. Drops of sweat from her forehead. Yeah, there we are.
This is not the world that I dreamed of. This is not the place where my dreams come true. But there's you, but there's you. You hold me tightly, you make the shadows fall. You give me all you have, you're beautiful. You are my country, you're all I need. You are my country, you're everything to me. All these small minds with even smaller hearts walk among us and plan their plans. So quick to judge me, so quick to judge you too. But there's you, but there's you. You hold me closely, I see the fears fall. You give me all you have, you're beautiful. You are my country, you're all I need. You are my country, you're everything to me. You are my country, you're all I need. You are my country, you're everything to me.
This one's, I wrote this after September 11th, called The Path Ahead. Fire burns the urban heart, and all our trusted comforts torn apart. Tall symbols fall, doomed souls vainly call, and in anger and fear and sorrow, yet knowing so well, we shun still the warning knell. Firing hate in an unthinking herd, loud men call for blood, while so many victims cry unheard. Death's black crow awaits his carrion prey. Shall we bid him stay, or sagely spurn him away? Yet must we crush again the poor who suffer need, or in this horror our salvation read.
I dreamt last night that we lay side by side and strummed chords down the length of each other's spine, in G major, legs entwined. It was a strange tune, awkward, yet melodic. You hum along softly, as though we're some kind of bizarre circus act. Come and see the one, the only, human guitar duet in G major. Then you pluck your fingers down the length of my neck, down the fret of each vertebrae, gently.
The plumbing's bad here. This is called tossing at Port Fairy, or manual labour. Oh, you're lucky. List to me while I a moral to you must tell. When at Port Fairy you do that camping spree, when 'tis in fun you seek to toss and not some bloody hell, the wisdom I tell I hope you will clearly see. When in a tent you sleep at Port Fairy, when in that tent you dream of sweet Mary, be sure the beam you hold in your romantic dream is not more than what it well may seem, that the pole with which you groan, oh, is the pole you truly own. For if the pole you grasp is the tent's true mast, then your blissful tent will turn to utter discontent, and all your dreams of Mary tossed to the cold night's blast. Oh. There you are, thank you.
It's easy for things to go wrong around water. More so if you can't swim.
It's great seeing kids confident in the water and enjoying themselves. An important part of keeping kids safer around water is learning to swim.
There are over 600 registered swimming schools that run the Australian Unity Learn to Swim program. To find one, go to the Swim Australia website.
Every new line means 2 more hands. Join us, lions.org.au.
Hot water storage tanks can be a breeding ground for Legionnaire's disease bacteria. You can catch Legionnaire's disease by inhaling small droplets of infected water during showers or other activities. To prevent this from happening, you should never reduce the temperature setting. Tank temperature should be left as set by your plumber. Or eliminate the problem completely with a tankless gas hot water system. For more information, visit healthyhotwater.com.au.
Behind every great athlete, there is a great support network. Australian Athletes with a Disability and Wheelchair Sports Australia help athletes realise their full potential.
Gonna go from 3, yes!
No matter their ability, we're there to support them. Sporting opportunities for all abilities. For more information, visit sports.org.au.
The Republic, We have a ruddy good chance of perhaps getting a republic soon, but keep our fingers crossed. The republic. The Queen just made it public. Britain is now a republic. Hang on, mate. What will Canberra say? Thousands are still waiting to have their say about donuts and toothpicks and silver trays, which heads to pick and games to play. The game's over, mate. The whistle's gone and they've shut the gate. Yeah, but even if we are a republic, we still have our flag to pick.
This one is called A Documentary Addict, which I have been for a long time. We fight over the remote with the footy and the films and Animal Planet. I'm a documentary addict for National Geo, World Around Us, name just a few. I hate all the game shows and Cowdies on 9. My favourite must be Channel 2. I love nothing better on the weekend than to sit with a hot cup of tea in front of the telly or with a good book filled with things like life under the sea. I adore hearing about sea otters, the life of gorillas and whales. There's a huge world of information as you hear of these marvellous tales. I read all about Mount St Helens. I could not get enough of the stuff. The devastation caused by it all, the life that it took with one puff. Give me pandas, giraffes and elephants. Give me information flowing in reams. Give me knowledge of creatures great and small. To see them all is in my dreams. I'll never get round all the world to see them, so I'll use TV, magazine or book. My mind is a thirsty sponge for these. All I need to do is just take a look. I'm a documentary addict, as I'd like all my kids to be, but I only noticed that I was at the tender age of 33. But I'm spending quite a lot of my time alone these days, as the family don't always enjoy the same things as their mum and dad. Did you, as a girl or a boy?
Once upon a time there was a girl who marvelled about the sand. She sat for hours, brown-limbed and parched, at the edge of the ocean, where the last few inches of water splashed up onto the sand, stretching to reach her toes. Some days she did not sit. Instead she would walk to the brown-black break wall, feet sloshing and squelching. Once there were hundreds of drowned butterflies, 2 or 3 more, with each step that the girl took, until finally she stopped, weary of so much death. When she did sit, the girl noticed the furry, whiskered heads of the sea worms. They poked themselves up out of the moist sand as each trickle of water gently made its way back to the ocean. And then she met a man who caught the worms. He teased their little faces out of the sand with the scent of calamari and fish. Their long, fat bodies would follow, curling around with 1,000 legs waving. They were 1 metre long, longer. The girl stopped marvelling at the sand, and instead she marvelled at the rainbow of colours beneath the worms' translucent skins. When the man thread their plump, wet flesh onto the end of a hook, the girl noticed that the rainbow of colours spilt out. Finally, the worms were returned to the ocean, their little legs, thousands upon thousands, strained and stretched, and far beneath them lay the sand. Apollo Bay, dusk. By the time we reached the pier, the spotlights overhead were casting long, golden reflections on the bay. We brought pizza with us and beer. The smell of prawns and capsicum mingled with the salty air. It was quiet. The faint plonk of the sinker hitting the water sent ripples reverberating across the surface in undulating circles. We sat in silence, best friends, lovers and enemies, all these 3 at once. An unhealthy love is often the most enduring kind, and we clung on for months, both of us unable to accept that it was over, while the relationship fell apart as insidiously as the water which seeped through the walls of our tent.
This one's just called The Jesuits. When some holy father stops to call, and my spirit bids old creaky knees to spring, dear God, 'tis nature's might, not faulty faith my limbs do stall. Yet why, O God, within my breast I deem myself a naughty, naughty thing? Dear Father, way above, your omnipotence I humbly love. May we ever dare to hope an agile Jesuit for a pope.
Silence. Not a complete silence. Still, there's a door creaking in the distance, the splash of a drop of water hitting the ground, the gentle influx and exhale of breath. Yet as close to silence as this noisy world gets. There's a noticeable absence of voices. Somewhere in the distance a gong sounds, then the rustling of fabric, the shuffle of feet and knees. This is a holy silence, filled with a rich and powerful reverberance. Time goes slower for lack of distractions. Outside, ice begins to thaw.
If you choose to drive when overtired,
you could ruin lives.
Someone else's, your family.
Splash of colour, orange, against the snow. It moves, catching the corner of my eye, then it's gone. An aesthetic void is left, white snow on white snow, shapes blending into each other so that all becomes a blank canvas. I imagine pouring paint onto this huge white canvas, flicking colours at the tip of my paintbrush, like a Jackson Pollock painting, a brilliance of colours, until the clouds above burst with fresh snow, dappling the painting at first with flecks of white, now more and more, until the canvas is blank again. The impermanence of it all. Now there's nothing left but the memory, and as my remembering becomes hazier still, there's nothing left at all.
If you choose to drive when overtired,
you could ruin lives.
Someone else's, your family's, or your own.
Choose a power nap instead.
The right choice could save someone's life.
Proud supporters of safety in our community.
GMCU and Southern Cross Stereo.
Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed.video, a different sort of TV.
It's party time here on 15 Fabulous Minutes for another half-hour special, and today we're taking you on a roller coaster ride. Where, Steve?
That's right, to the Commercial Road at Poofter and Dyke Fabulous Festival here, and it's all going off, I tell you. Fasten to your seats because it's going to be a bumpy ride.
Midsummer 2000, well, what could be more exciting? Do you know, the most amazing thing is we actually made it into this century. I'm in Commercial Road, and this is the opening of our fabulous carnival, and I hope if you don't come down tonight that you can come to some of the other events at the carnival, in particular the carnival at the end of the whole festival. We'll see you there. Bye-bye.
Came all the way from Vancouver, Canada to be here at the Midsummer Festival. I juggle chainsaws, I blow fire to my ass. Kids, try this at home, it's fun. How else do you think I got started? Go home, play with fire, play with matches, play with chainsaws. It's fun, it's circus. Circus is in these days. Have fun, that's what life's all about. That's why I'm here in Australia. In Canada right now, there's 10 feet of snow, it's minus 40. I'm here in Australia, it's only, well, 10 degrees, but hey, I'm having fun. That's what it's all about. Thanks for having me, Australia.
Hi! We're here for Midsummer. This is my little brother Chris from the country who's come up especially for Midsummer because it's so much fun.
I'm the referee for the Trolley Dolly Folly Race. It's the inaugural race. We have drag queens flying up and down Commercial Road, hunting out the treasure trove of gifts and prizes for the prize. Any moment now, they'll be coming. Here comes one now. I'm going to have to get out of the way because as you can see, they're tearing down the street. They've got the tyre and the police, and it's quite a dangerous looking affair.
They say, come out of the closet. Now, who's in the closet here? We have to get the keys, maybe.
Ta-da! No, I'm only kidding. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Maurice from Montreal, Canada. And I'm from the Rainbow Sash movement, a worldwide movement of people who wish to help people throughout the world recognise gay and lesbian and bisexual and other people within the Christian churches, including the Catholic Church. So please join the Rainbow Sash movement wherever you see them throughout the cathedrals of the world as we try and help people celebrate God-given sexuality.
Now, I reckon some people don't even know what's going on. Do you know what's going on today?
I've got no idea at all.
You kind of look lost in awe here.
Sorry?
You look lost and in awe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really lost.
So you're looking for a friend or something?
No, I was with a friend and I've got some spare 2 hours to spare.
Are you going to go enjoy this festival then?
I'm just looking, yeah.
Just looking. You may cross and jump the fence?
No.
Oh, look, the fence is right here. You just have to jump the fence.
No, I might go in the middle there. And
you might go in the middle. You're a bit sitting in the middle. Okay. Well, come on, jump the fence. Jump the fence and do the gay and lesbian street party.
All right.
Yeah, go on. It'll be fun.
I just want to let you know I'm gay. Tonight I'm going to be free, I'm going to booze, I'm going to get cross-eyed and drunk, and hearing people are going to be the same. I'm going to really enjoy tonight. Hopefully it'll be a wild night. 2000, way to go. Melbourne have a lot of deaf, gay and lesbians in the community who love to party, and they feel equal with the hearing community. Communication is utmost and important here. That's our number one aim. So let's go and party. And hearing, don't worry about the communication. It's the same. Hey. I'm very positive. He's a negative person. Square. Oh, bullshit. Shush. Have a great night. Welcome to hearing people to the deaf community. We're really flexible and very welcoming. That's it. Have a great night.
Station Manager of Joy Melbourne, Paul Tedich, and we are giving away balloons and doing all sorts of things to kick off Midsummer, including our live broadcast just over here. Well, our live broadcast goes from 4 in the afternoon and we'll finish at 11 tonight with the 2 non-bongs. Midsummer's really important to Joy Melbourne, and in terms of our community as a whole, and just in terms of us getting to celebrate our sexuality as gay men, lesbians, and all of the others who are allied with our community.
You're from Paris, wow! So have you found the festival today?
It was very good, I really enjoyed it, and the people are very nice. There are a lot of lesbians.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Can you compare the Melbourne gay scene to the Parisian one or the French one?
There's more here, more
really?
Oh, yes. Totally.
What about the dress? Are you a lesbian?
Yes, I'm a lesbian.
You're a lipstick lesbian then, aren't you?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, about being a lipstick lesbian? What is that? You got short hair?
Yes, short hair it's because it's easier in summer. But I have lipstick because I think it suits me. You know?
So, why is it that a lot of lesbians no makeup, they put on weight, they drive motorbikes?
I don't relate to them at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you use oil of Ulan and stuff like that to keep so youthful and gorgeous?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I love men too. You know?
Oh, right.
Friends, that's friends.
Hi, I'm Olympia from Colts Gym and I'm down here on Commercial Road for Diversity Day. Hope you're all having fun. Come down to Commercial Road and enjoy the night. Thank you.
Okay, we're here with Carlotta. Now, you've noticed, like, Commercial Road, how much has it changed over the years?
Oh, it's fabulous.
It's got better? Or?
Yeah. We'll be the Prime Minister next.
Yeah? Now, how hard was it for you in your era?
Terrible. Terrible.
Why? What were the things you had to overcome?
Well, we used to get chased down the street by police, but look at this.
By the coppers? And now you're chasing the coppers down the street.
Oh, well, they're chasing me. For other reasons.
You're chasing. So it's a major event. We've come a long way.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
And you enjoying yourself getting pissed tonight, doing anything?
I'm just going to relax, lay back, take lots of photos and show them in Sydney what a good time you have in Melbourne.
Oh, absolutely. I'll send you the video. We'll just show them up there.
Thank you.
Show them how to party.
Hi, I'm Jenna Jerkov here at the Commercial Road Festival. Very early, me, Feral Beryl are DJing here for 2 hours. We're going to get rocked the joint. We're going to go party, get drunk, smack our faces off full of everything we can get. Going to be really good. The trolley dolly race has been on. Beryl's DJing. We're setting up for Red Raw. What else are we up to? We got shows. I go on stage up at near the Commercial Exchange Hotel, 9:30. All of us drags are singing along to the hippiest songs out. What else? I'm obviously lying here looking very relaxed. And this is Feral Beryl. No words. Feral Beryl being a bitch. She's the DJ for 2 hours, so what else is going on? We got the food, we got the water, we got the alcohol happening, the drugs, everything going on.
Hello Melbourne, I'm Feral Beryl and I've just finished my first ever DJ set. I don't think I'll be bothering doing that again because I'm a drag queen, you know, and I have to mime. Playing records is not for me, I don't think. Anyway, this is Midsummer, this is Commercial Road. I much preferred Midsummer when it was in Brunswick Street, but that's another story. Yeah, I'm a drag queen by choice, so I don't get forced to do it. Anyway, I'm not feeling very well at the moment. I'm very mentally unstable. No one seems to understand that you don't have to be treated like garbage. Nothing inspired me. I was chosen to be a drag queen. You get chosen. That's just what drag is. Probably Divine, John Waters, 80s trash music. That's what inspired me, the music, but I mean, Melbourne, you know. No, I'm not interested. Sorry. Yeah, I'm very different to a lot of other drag queens and people. I don't get along with many people, so I thank Midsummer for giving me this opportunity to do this.
Wondering, are you a model from Europe? Because you're very tall.
Yes, well, I had my leg extensions done by my great-great-grandfather, Dr. Frankenstein.
Oh, is that expensive?
No, just when I was 3 years old, he just chopped my leg off, put big spikes in the bottom of my feet, and I have been like this ever since.
Okay, so what are the major difficulties you think? You know, going under bridges?
My major difficulty is finding the man of my dreams.
I can relate to that. And even at my height, it's a problem. Good luck.
It's very sad. Thank you very much.
How was the Trolley Stolly event?
Rather exhausting, darling.
Exhausting? You were run off your feet there, weren't you?
I know, and I'm an old queen too.
Oh, you're an old queen. Did you win?
Well, I was runner-up and I won a lovely prize.
What did you win?
I won a video recorder. But I was the only one that went everywhere and got every single thing. And I even had to hock one of my rings.
You hocked your ring?
Yes. At Porter Street to get a lousy old towel.
Oh, terrible.
Show you something, darling.
Okay, what are you going to show me?
This is for you.
This is for me.
You want to see it again?
Yeah, go ahead. Makes noises. What's in there?
Bowling.
Jeez, your knockers are knocking. They're bolt. They are hard as rocks. Total... They are. They're bowling balls.
My name is Shane. I'm at the Elephant Bar on Commercial Road. We're having a great time. So if you see this or if you don't see this, come on down and see what the Commercial Road Festival is all about.
Midsummer Street Party this year is really, really huge, expecting a crowd of 50,000 people. So it looks as though it's going to happening. I'd just like to say a special thank you to all of the Midsummer volunteers who've been working really, really hard. Thanks, everyone.
You've been watching Steve and Jacqueline here down at Commercial Road. I tell you what, come down here, you get a complete and utter change. It's a very creative environment. I've had a bit of a makeover. I've decided to go a bit blonder. And this is the Edward Star. And Edward Star's a bit of a personality down here in Commercial Road. Are you enjoying your night?
Oh, look, I'm having a bloody fabulous time. I haven't had such a good time since, actually, Porter Street around the corner.
Okay, highly recommend it. A few people have mentioned Porter Street, actually, but don't touch the towels. So stay tuned for more after the break. I suppose you'll have a great sense of fashion. You look totally gorgeous. Hello everybody, happy Midsummer Festival!
I think I got lucky. I found a nice lady and you're looking really good. You're looking gorgeous.
Oh, it just gets better as it gets darker, love. Yeah.
You've got a very deep voice for a nice pretty girl.
It's my mother's fault.
Oh, look, can you help me out here? It's getting really, really confusing now. I don't know what's man, what's woman. What do you class yourself as?
Bonnie Tyler. No, not Bonnie Tyler, no. Entertainer.
Entertainer. Well, that's a different one, I must say.
Yeah, entertainer.
Now, what makes you want to do this?
A lot of money and a bit of fun, a lot of booze.
Well, yeah.
I get it all, baby.
You get more attention being dressed as a woman or more than a...
Wouldn't you? Hello?
Oh, jeez, I don't know about that.
You had like a really crappy hair on in broad daylight.
No, because I've heard rumours, you dress up, put the dress on, put the frock on, and guys just leech at you.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
Straight guys?
Yeah, and they love it.
And what do you do? Do they ever crack on? Do they ever realise it?
Yeah.
They do, and they don't mind that?
That's why they want it, yeah.
Okay, we'll figure that one out later.
It's a hot day here, very muggy, and my makeup's just about run off my face. Tell you what, it's all over the ground here between the trag tracks. I'm just wondering how you're coping in the heat with your makeup. It's perfect.
Oh, well, there's a secret to doing drag makeup, and that is you put it on 3 times and spray the shit out of it with hairspray every time.
Okay, have you got any other secrets, like, how do you cope with tram tracks and high heels?
Stay out of them.
Stay out of tram tracks or stay out of high heels?
Stay out of tram tracks. I tell you what, there was a shopping trolley race earlier.
Yes, we got that.
And I was in that and I won.
Congratulations, you dent anybody's car. I've got a silver Hyundai.
No, I didn't dent anyone's car.
Fantastic. Now, what was the secret to winning that? You didn't get one with a dodgy wheel?
No, I didn't get one with a dodgy wheel, but I did miss out on getting one of the trophies that we had to get. It was like a scavenger hunt. We had to go around and get things.
The Market Hotel. Well, there you go. Formerly known as Three Faces, one of Melbourne's main gay nightclubs. Here, chock-a-block full of puss and fags and a couple of dykes over there as well. Guys, you enjoying yourself?
Yeah, it's a great night.
Do you come to the market often as a regular event or not?
Yeah,
I do. What the hell are you doing with that microphone? Where's it going? It's going in places where it's never been before. Where are you going?
Really? Yeah, that's where I'm going too. You better go back to here.
So you come here quite a lot then? It's a night spot?
Probably every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. Is it a good fun club?
It's a fun club. Yeah.
What sort of music?
It's fun, techno music, a lot better than it used to be.
And what kind of people?
Young, fun and gay.
Young, fun and gay. There you go. That wraps that one up.
What a travesty. Here I am. You saw the marker from the outside, and this is a marker from the inside. That's right, and you didn't even have to queue. Now, it's a travesty, though. I'm not wearing my glitter. Woo! Obviously, I haven't seen it very often. This is more where your gay ensemble would hang out rather than your lesbians. They tend to hang out in Brunswick Street. So, we're just going to walk through. Now, what are you doing today with your pink sash?
We're safe sex sluts.
What we did is we're handing out dental dams and condoms.
Excuse me, do you come here often?
Yes, I do.
And why would that be? Why the market of all places in Commercial Road or in Melbourne?
Why the market? Because it's new, it's fresh, and it's exciting.
Okay, now when people come here, what's the drink that everybody asks for, basically?
Well, I always ask for vodka, lime, and lemon.
Why is it that gay people always have that drink?
I don't know, maybe it's to whet their appetite, maybe.
Okay, so you kick off the night with lemon, a stolly and vodka and lime. And then what happens at the market? Tell us a little bit about what happens to people who don't actually come.
Yeah, well, there's
inside information.
Inside information. There's always drag shows going on. A lot of people come here. I don't know, it's just a good atmosphere. Great people. Everyone's just friendly and it's really a lot of fun and exciting.
What made you decide, that's it, I want to dress up, be a woman?
Well, fun.
It looked like fun, and is it fun?
Well, 4 years later.
4 years later, they say once doing drag, that's it, you never go back. Is that true?
You never get a boyfriend either.
You never get a boyfriend. I wonder why.
They can't cope.
Is it something like on a Jerry Springer show, you know? You tell them later that you're actually a man?
That's it.
Are you, like, got the chop, or you don't want to do that?
No. I'm a man during the day.
You're a man during the day.
These aren't real. I know they look real.
What gets more attention, the man at the day or the woman at the night?
Woman of the night.
So that's why you go out at night, yeah? How long does it take to do the full thing?
About 2 hours.
2 hours.
It's my very great pleasure to introduce to you Millie Minogue. How are you this afternoon?
I'm fine, thank you. And you?
Very well, thanks. Now, you're one of the most renowned Kylie Minogue impersonators. How would you describe yourself? As an impersonator or what exactly?
Yeah, an impersonator, and yeah, basically that's all it is.
Have you managed to keep up with lots of Kylie's changes, her image changes over the years? Because she's been around for about 10 years now.
Yeah, I try to keep up as much as I can and all that carry on, yeah.
Millie, can you possibly tell me which part of Kylie's career you enjoyed the most?
I think now, I think now it's really, she's really become a sex kitten of the, you know, Australian sex kitten of the pop industry. Yeah. She's doing her best work now, I think.
And how does that influence the work you do now?
Well, it makes it more interesting for me because I can also play with it and sometimes do my own impressions on it and all that.
And what's the song that you prefer to sing the most of Kylie's ensemble?
Which song? Better the Devil You Know, I think. It's always a great anthem, and it's just everyone's favourite, and that's the best song.
Oh my God, you are the weirdest looking gay couple I've ever seen. Do you think? Are you a cross-dresser?
No, unfortunately not.
You're the real McCoy, so you guys are a couple, obviously.
Yeah.
So what makes you come down to a gay festival?
Friends. Just friends. Yep.
So pretty open-minded.
Gay community.
Yeah. Yep. Do you think there's any conflict anymore between straights and gays?
No, not with me.
Very easy going now, really.
Yeah.
But being like straight, how do you never nervous around a gay guy?
No, never.
Why's that?
Never a threat. Never a threat, I suppose, because
they don't do it for you. Yeah?
Maybe I just don't turn them on, I don't know.
Maybe you don't turn them on. Maybe they don't turn you on. Whatever, however it works.
No, I think if they know you're straight, there's not a problem. They don't approach you. So
it's a very friendly and safe environment as well.
This is CM's, and there's lots of CM's around Melbourne, and this is the club store. And I tell you what, this is the reason why it's going off. This is Dimitri, the DJ who knows how to spin a mean disc.
Enjoying tonight's festival?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I'm enjoying it very much. Except you're going to ruin my mix now, hang on.
I'm going to ruin your mix.
No, it's okay. I'm an expert at this, so
okay, yeah, just show how pro you are. What sort of audience do you normally get to dance to?
Well, seeing it's Commercial Road, I'm sort of starting off with a housey sort of style of music. Hopefully that'll get them going, and towards the end of the night, hopefully go into the harder side of it when they're all sort of half-tied and, you know, ready to release that last bit of energy.
Now, obviously straight yourself. How do you deal with the gay community?
How do I deal with them?
Yeah.
Very well. I love them. They love me, I love them.
Yep. Yeah. No problems there?
Not a problem at all.
It's a pleasure to be here on Channel 31. I just wish Sydney had a really effective public TV station. It does have one, but their signal's like not so great. You know, where I am, it's best to look at the side of a pack of matches better than look at just not a good signal at all where we are in Sydney. So yeah, congratulations on your signal strength.
Now, I want to know, obviously, are you a couple?
No.
No. You're gay?
Yeah.
So does that mean you're the mag hang?
No, I'm a tranny.
Oh, you're a tranny? It's so hard to tell these days. I thought, so you're a man once?
Used to be.
So you've had the full chop?
Not yet. I'm waiting for a sponsor.
So you want the full chop?
Yes. Two.
Oh, that would hurt. Well, what happens then when it's off?
Will you?
Huh?
You want to see it when it's off?
No, what happens when it's off?
I don't know.
So new.
And I have here none other than Molly Meldrum. How are you?
How are you? Very well, thank you.
Thank you very much. How are you enjoying your night tonight?
Sorry?
How are you enjoying your night tonight?
I'm having a ball. I mean, like, I'm guilty of that. I was here last night around at Club V.
You haven't gone home?
I haven't had a sleep, but it's good. It's really good, you know.
And so where are you off to later?
Sorry?
Where are you off to later?
Freakazoid and then Dome and who knows.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Queen of Commercial Road?
No, I'm not the queen of Commercial Road, the princess.
The princess. You're a queen, are you?
No, not quite, darling.
You've got a very deep voice for a woman.
I know.
And I can't figure it out. I'm finding a few out here with the deep voices. What do you class yourself as?
I'm a woman, darling.
You're a woman, darling. All cut had the chop.
Had the chop.
Had the chop. Was that painful?
No, it's good fun.
How is life after the chop?
Excellent.
Any different?
Yes, much better.
Better. So your life has improved immensely?
Absolutely, yeah.
Hey, we just want to say thanks very much for watching tonight's program, and thanks to all those who have been supporting the gay and lesbian community out there. And there's a lot of straight folk that there's no difference between any sexes anymore, I don't think, do you?
Oh, get off your soapbox. We're having a great time. Hope you had a good time watching.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Nando's chicken worth coming out for.
Jump the fence and do the gay and lesbian street party.
All right.
Yeah, go on.
Each week, MELfeed.video presents the CEC Report. The Citizens Electoral Council of Australia presents a weekly program of political and economic analysis with policy solutions which are aimed at saving Australia from economic collapse and also suggest ways in which interested members of the public can assist in their campaigns. The CEC Report, coming up next on MELfeed.video.
I didn't think this could happen in Toowoomba. And then I saw it on TV that night. It really opened my eyes.
Whenever the community comes to us and says we need your help, we do whatever we can to assist.
It is a great feeling to be able to help your neighbours, to be able to help your community.
Each Lions member and each Lions club in different parts of the country, we're totally different. But we have core values that are the same. They remain the same for any Lions member and any Lions club anywhere in not just Australia but around the world.
Anything that you can think of that you want to do and support and help, Lions are doing it right now somewhere in this world.
I think Lions need to tell their story. They need to let people know the amazing things that they do.
The three major streams that we have in Lions are the community service that we do for the public, health and medical research, and the disaster relief.
We're out there to help people. If you love helping people, get out and help them. Join a Lions Club.
We started this project about 20 years ago. All this gear would normally go to the tip. We recycle it and give it to someone less fortunate and where it is needed in the world.
Being a Lion here in Australia means that I can make a difference to my community. But most importantly, it's inspiring other people to get out and be part of their community and make it a safer and a much happier and better place to live.
Childhood cancer, I've always been interested in cancer and small children from the time I first got cancer 30 years ago. Research is an indefinite item. You can't see it, but it helps so much.
I'm here managing the money and the relationships, but other people are out there raising funds and bringing in community support. Without all of us working together, we can't affect change.
2 more extra hands at any function, any working bee, anything we do, 2 more hands can help us raise more funds, can help us serve our community better.
I went to my Lions Club and I said, I got this idea and I think it's a little bit crazy, but I think we could raise some serious money doing it. And it was to run 100 kilometres. And the club said, okay, if you want to do this, whatever you need us to do, we'll be there 100%. And I'm pretty proud to say that together we raised just over $16,000. So we blew the target out of the water, and I think that was due to a lot of the support that I got.
Through my leadership training and all that, I've learned about thinking global and acting local, and Lions Club is definitely that kind of thing. They act within their communities, but the money that they raise can often end up in any corner of the world.
As an individual, I could only do so much, and whilst it was my burning desire to try and help these people, having an organisation such as the Lions family to call upon to support me and those people that were working with me just made it possible for us to achieve so much more.
You know, after the devastation, to come back into the community, you know, you were shattered by what you saw. You know, no police station, no post office, no petrol station, you know, no kindergarten. There was nothing here.
And all that water with an unstoppable.
I don't know that I've ever seen as much as arrived. There were fridges, washing machines, dryers. There was toasters, jugs, just everything.
To be invited to be a part of Lions just opened up a whole new world to me. A world that provided a structured organisation that could see that the hours that I volunteered could achieve so much more.
I think Lions is a wonderful organisation. The people in it have charity in their hearts.
I can go anywhere in this country, see somebody with a Lions badge, walk up to them and say, good day, you got a friend.
Never once in my life had I had a group of people where I could go to, say anything, and know that no matter what, they would be there, they would stand by me.
It's the family. That's what we call it. It's the Lions family. Without Lions, I think I'd be lost now because they've been my life.
We work hard, but the most important thing is we have fun.
The fellowship of all the members of the club, the broader community, it's just a tremendous organisation to belong to. You know, I'll be here till I die.
It is extremely rewarding and gratifying to be a part of an organisation that can spread its support so far and wide.
More members means more hands, means more support to the community.
I would encourage everyone just to give it a go and see if it is for them, because the return that you get for giving to others is amazing.
Get out there, do something wonderful, be part of this fantastic organisation.
Playing the 80s on Air FM 88.0.
Hi, this is Darren McAlane from Air FM Drive. Join me from 3 to 6 p.m. every afternoon on 88.0 in Penrith, and also you can catch me on tunein.com. That's from 3 to 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time.
Playing the 80s on Air FM 88.0.
If you choose to speed,
you could ruin lives.
Someone else's, your family's, or your own.
Choose not to instead.
The right choice could save someone's life.
Proud supporters of safety in our community.
GMCU and Southern Cross Austereo.
Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed.video, a different sort of TV.
Welcome to the CEC Report. It's the 31st of August. I'm Robert Barwick, and joining me today is the CEC's Victoria State Chairman, Jeremy Beck. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thanks, Robbie.
Jeremy, before we begin, it's the 31st of August, so as the great poet Shelley said, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? We've made it. I just want to say that because it's been bloody cold.
In the next 2 days, it's going to be like winter.
Great. Anyway, so we're having cold winters again, and you can certainly feel it. All right. This week's on the CEC Report. Australia can't control rising interest rates that will crash the bubble and the criminal banks, and prepare for a fake chemical attack in Syria as regime change fails. So first, Australia can't control rising interest rates that will crash the bubble and the banks. And Jeremy, before we get into this, I just want to foreshadow, in a few minutes, you and I are going to be talking about our new Prime Minister, which is the big news. Last week when we recorded the show, it wasn't known who the Prime Minister was going to be, right? One of three possibilities. So now the new Prime Minister is Scott Morrison, and we've got a few things to say about him. But that is now secondary news to the fact that what's happened in the last few days is actually a very big deal with the rising, with Westpac's decision to raise their interest rates. Because it's not just the implications of that, but the way it happened, right? Which is why when people understand the dynamic that's in play here, you have to be realistic that we're heading for a crash, right? Mainly because a lot of this is outside of the authorities' control. So here's what's happened. Westpac announced they're going to raise their interest rates by 0.14% or 14 basis points, right? This is like a trigger. And you can expect other banks to follow suit. But I want people to listen to how Westpac Chairman Brian Hartzer justified the decision to the 7:30 report the other night on the ABC.
Against the backdrop of constant revelations of misconduct in the banking sector, Westpac today raised variable interest rates out of cycle with the Reserve Bank, hitting its mortgage customers. With me to explain why is the bank's CEO, Brian Hartzer. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Your latest half-year profit was $4.2 billion. Why can't you use some of that to absorb the funding pressures instead of passing them on to customers?
Well, first can I say, Lee, that this is a difficult decision. Any time that we're affecting people's cost of living, it's something we take very seriously. The reality is we borrow money to provide the funding for people's home loans, and the cost of that funding has gone up.
But an ordinary householder has to now work within their budget to absorb the extra money they'll have to pay out on their mortgage, yet one of the wealthiest institutions in the country can't do the same?
Well, we have worn the cost of this for 6 months. The key rate that's been affected here is the 90-day bank bill swap rate. That started to rise back in February. We've worn the cost of that over the last 6 months. We were hoping that cost would go down. Part of our job is to absorb the variability in markets, so we were hoping it would go back down. We wouldn't have to make these changes. But 6 months on, we've sadly had to conclude that this is a more permanent change, or certainly it's going to persist for a while. And part of my job sometimes is to make difficult decisions that are about the long-term sustainability of our business, and that involves addressing increases in funding costs.
So what he's identified there, Jeremy, is 90-day debt. Now, what is 90? Or he referred to it as the 90-day BBSW swap rate. He said that's the key interest rate that's forced us to make this decision. What's he talking about? He's talking about the fact that the banks owe a lot of money on 90-day debt. And in case you don't get what that means they borrow money that they have to pay back 3 months later.
It has to be rolled over and rolled over and rolled over continuously.
Well, it has to be rolled over because of the size of it. And the latest ABS figures for the March quarter showed that Australia as a whole owed $456 billion overseas on 90-day debt, right, every 3 months. And that's why it has to be rolled over, because Australia cannot pay, in 3 months' time, in the next 3 months, pay $456 billion overseas. We can't do it. What we've got to do is you borrow more to pay out the debt that's coming due that day.
And that's borrowed from overseas.
That's borrowed from overseas.
Which, of course, the interest rates are rising overseas. So it doesn't matter what our RBA does.
Exactly.
And this is the problem.
Exactly. The RBA has kept interest rates on hold for a record amount of time at this record low of 1.5%, right? They could do that forever. But this amount of money the banks owe overseas, that's what is going up. Now, so this is what a lot of people will attack Brian Hartzer and Westpac for doing this, and of course they are. You probably saw it over the news. And they deserve to be attacked for a lot, including for getting themselves into this position. However, what the public has to understand is this is the vulnerability of Australia. This is outside of our control. So I want to play another clip now. Martin North, who's the leading authority in terms of an analyst on this subject in Australia at the moment. He's interviewed by the media all over the place because he is our foremost analyst on banks and mortgage market. He made a quick post about it where he expects the banks to copy Westpac and more of this to happen.
Today, Westpac blinks. Hello, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Just a quick post to say that Westpac has announced that it is lifting its mortgage rates for variable loans by 14 basis points. This is slightly below the 19 basis point rise in the BBSW since February, and frankly was flagged last week when they announced that their margins had been compressed, and we discussed that in a separate post. So this marks the next round of tightening, in my view, in terms of mortgage rates. I expect other lenders to follow suit, but not necessarily immediately and not necessarily in quite the same way. What this does show is that irrespective of what the Reserve Bank may choose to do with the cash rate, and I've said for some time I expect the cash rate to remain flat and possibly fall later, it's the out-of-cycle rates that are really going to hit home as households continue to struggle with their mortgage repayments and other costs of living in a flat income market. And this is yet another signal that the overall direction of home prices will be lower over the next few months, as we've been discussing in recent days. So in a way, no surprise, but I was expecting Westpac to be the first to move, and now it's occurred. In fact, I did say earlier on in the year it would be by September, so I'm pretty close.
And so, as Martin emphasised there, it's the vulnerable borrowers that are going to get caught out by this, right? And that has huge consequences if it leads to rising defaults, and that's where we're going. And one of the reasons is that you can state that categorically is because of the Royal Commission. The Royal Commission has exposed. Well, it did a little bit. Other people have done a lot more, but the Royal Commission brought it more to the public's attention. There's a huge amount of fraud in mortgage lending for a long period of time. And the purpose of the fraud is because the banks wanted to lend more money. They ran out of people who could afford to borrow, so they used fraud to justify lending to people who couldn't afford it. Mm-hmm. So they couldn't afford to borrow at their existing rates, right? The loans they've got now, they actually can't afford them. Now, they certainly can't afford rising interest rates. Now, we don't have time to go through it, but the CEC has just put out a press release today, which is based on an article in this week's issue of the Australian Alert Service. APRA chairman misled Senate on mortgage fraud. So I urge people you can call in for a free copy of the Alert Service if you want to read that, or read the press release that you get on the email. That story goes through APRA's complicity in this fraud, some of the scale of it, right? And that is what is the part of the iceberg that's under the water here, right? That means that as these interest rates inevitably rise, we're heading for a huge problem. And I just wanted to emphasise this one aspect of it. Martin North has also made a post on his Digital Finance Analytics page where he's reported some of UBS's latest work on some of this fraud. And I want to put a chart up on the screen here. And the chart shows how, for the banks, the fraud worked. So what you have is major banks' reduction in borrowing power. And I'll just explain the different columns. The first column is the various levels of income. But what the banks didn't matter what income you had, they reported all expenses as $32,400. So if you borrowed if you had $80,000 income, they said your expenses were $32,400. If you had $500,000 income, they said your expenses were $32,400. And that allowed them to lend huge amounts of money on those false estimates of expenses. Now the Royal Commission, in the fourth column there, the Royal Commission has forced the banks to upgrade their actual estimates of expenses to more realistic ones, and that's drastically reduced how much money the banks can lend to those household income levels, right? And that's done two things. It's reduced the amount of lending, or the capacity to lend, plus more fundamentally, it has trapped existing borrowers who were lent on false pretenses in the mortgage they got. They cannot even refinance. The most stunning statistic is the percentage of the rejection rate for borrowers applying to refinance in the last less than 12 months has shot up 1,250% because the banks cannot let them refinance. They don't qualify for any other type of loan because they don't qualify for their existing loan. Martin North estimates about half of existing borrowers are trapped in their current loan.
This is insane. This is the liar loans too.
Exactly.
People, just about all the loans are actually based on a fraud of income assessments which don't actually exist. Denise Brayley, an expert on this, she said straight out that most of these loans are liar loans.
But Denise also says this is fundamental. Who were the liars? Not the borrowers, the banks. This is the fraud question. And if these people cannot escape their mortgage by refinancing and interest rates are going up, there's only one other option for them, that's to default. And that threatens the bubble, the housing bubble, and that threatens the banks, right? And that's why we need a total revamp of the banking system, starting with the Glass-Steagall separation of the banks, which we have the bill for in Parliament. Let's take a break there. When we come back, we're going to talk about Scott Morrison and his role in this.
Hello. I'd like you to put your hand up to the screen and place it on mine. Now, if you drive when you've been taking drugs and you kill someone, this will be as close as you get to your family for a very long time.
It's always been my dream to represent Australia in the Olympics. Epilepsy affects nearly 250,000 Australians. Like me, most people have their seizures controlled with medication. Even today, people with epilepsy face incredible discrimination, but this prejudice is just another obstacle we can overcome. We're just as capable as anyone else, and often we have to be stronger. I promise I'll do my best for Australia. Will you do your best for me?
No one knows what to say.
I try and treat him the same as I always have.
He didn't want to give up. He just couldn't.
Caring for Catherine was tough, but when I look back, it was the best thing we ever did together.
It's hard to know how to talk about dying. These people know. If you need to know how, visit lifeanddeath.org.au and join the conversation.
So, you think you're ready for this?
To take on the world? Why not?
Welcome back to the CEC Report, where we're discussing Australia can't control rising interest rates that will crash the bubble and the criminal banks. And now, Jeremy, let's get on to the criminal banks part of it. So before the break, we were talking about the consequences of the mortgage fraud due to these criminal banks, which is leading Australia to a financial crash in the context of rising interest rates. One of the reasons we have such a big problem here is because the criminality of the banks was protected for so long. And one of the main protectors of that criminality in the banks, political protectors, is now our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison.
Right.
Now, we've put out a release, and the title is Prime Minister Scott Morrison, Mr. Caveat Emptor. Why do we call him that?
You only have to have a look at his history, going back to the days when he was in the Property Council, which created this whole property bubble. You have a look at his recent history where he's said, and I'll quote, this is what he said as Treasurer just on the 3rd of August. He said, too often we, the customers, have become complicit in allowing the debt to be stacked against us. You can guarantee it, the more passive a customer is, the worse deal they are going to get.
And
now
he's
caveat emptor...
He's talking about the banks there.
Yeah.
Deal from the banks.
This caveat emptor, that's Latin for let the buyer beware. So in other words, if you're swindled, it's your fault. And it's effectively what Scott Morrison is saying there.
And the term for that is victim blaming. When it comes to the banks, Scott Morrison has blamed the victims and said, it's your fault, you're too passive, that's why. Whereas the Royal Commission has revealed real crimes, right? This is not a free market dynamic here, we're talking about actual criminality. It has to be said, Jeremy, we'll put a picture on the screen that was provided to us by Victims of Financial Fraud, John Telford, where he made a comment on this based on that quote you just read out, where Morrison says the bank victims have been too passive. Well, remember, a big chunk of those bank victims were dead people that CBA was still charging well after they were dead. I suppose maybe that's who he was talking about. That's the definition of passive, right?
And remember, when there's all these talk for Royal Commissions for years, he was voting against it consistently, and he even called it a populist whinge. You don't want this. He was covering up for the banks. No, there's no two ways about it.
Now, let me put it. This permeates his whole view of everything, right? So yesterday, when Westpac raised rates, all the politicians did their, rah rah rah, bad Westpac. Of course, without intending to do a thing about it. So Morrison did that whole routine as well. But then he said this when he was talking about what the customer should do. In other words, putting the onus on the customer. Just have a quick look.
If you don't like what Westpac's done, go to another bank.
So again, he puts the onus entirely on the customer. And I have to say this, one of our wits here in the office made the point when Scott Morrison says, just go to another bank, it is quicker to change the Prime Minister of Australia than it is to change your bank.
Yeah,
right? That's the bottom line.
In there, usually there's no way. And you go to another bank, what other bank? They're all much of the same business model, the big four. And
they're all going to raise rates if they haven't already. They know that, right? This is callousness. Anyway, let's get down to brass tacks. This is where it gets serious. In your article that you wrote in this week's Alert Service, Jeremy, on this, you asked this question on the victim blaming stuff. Would Morrison also blame abused children for tempting pedophiles? Now, why is that an especially relevant question for this Prime Minister?
You only have to go back to Morrison's maiden speech about a decade ago. He said, one of his mentors, Brian Hewson. Now, Brian Hewson, a Hillsong pastor, was the head of the Assemblies of God Church in Australia. His father was a serial pedophile. And now, we're not, look, Scott Morrison...
That's not Morrison's responsibility. That's not about
exactly right. But you got to say, look, here you got Brian Hewson. That's Scott Morrison's mentor. Now, Brian Hewson was covering up this crime, and it's on record. You go back to the Royal Commission into Child Sexual Abuse, and it's on record. Brian Hewson covered up this crime and didn't go about it the right way. Not only that, Brian Hewson, according to testimony from victims, he said, it's the children's fault that they were abused. He said, you tempted my father. Think about that. You tempted my father. Now, how could anyone say that? Now, he denies it, but this is in the testimony, and you go and read it, and why would that victim lie about that?
And this is, now let me say this, because this is quite disturbing, and I'll say this as well. Brian Hewson heads the biggest church in Australia, and it's one of the reasons that people don't like talking about this, because politicians, it's such a huge church, politicians flock to it to sort of ingratiate themselves to that body of people so they can be sure they get them on side for voting and those things. And when that kind of power is at stake, then this is when things get overlooked. It's it's the quality of what they teach in that church, though, that we also take exception to. It's called prosperity gospel, right? It's not. I call it as someone who has a history in Christianity, right? Very well versed in it. This might be just my view, but I call it perverse Christianity because I think what they teach there goes hand in hand with victim blaming and with neoliberalism.
Yeah.
Give us some examples of that.
Think about, Morrison's mentor, Brian Houston. One of Brian Houston's books is that you need more money discovering God's amazing financial plan for your future. Now think about that. What sort of a book is that? Has that got anything to do with Christianity? I don't think so.
What they do is they define God's blessing as you getting monetary wealth.
Yeah.
That is if you get monetary wealth, God is blessing you.
Yeah.
The flip side of that is if you aren't wealthy, God is not blessing you, and it must be something you have done wrong.
Yeah. Well, this is the whole neoliberal model. It's victim blaming. If you haven't succeeded, well, it must be your fault, not the system's fault. And actually, in actual fact, the whole globalisation system is the one that is pushing people further and further backwards. I mean, take for instance the property market, which of course Morrison has a big role in that in his former job as in the Property Council, and his current and his previous job as Treasurer. Property. Who can afford property these days? You've written off an entire generation of young people who can't afford a house anymore.
And we'll just identify a couple of other things about Morrison while we're on the subject. How does Christianity reconcile with what he did to refugees by imposing the offshore detention up there where children were locked up indefinitely, right? Which is, I can't reconcile that with Christianity or with being an Australian, by the way. Finally, just quickly in the time we've got, there's big questions about how he even got into Parliament.
Yeah, well, actually, this is a long-going story, but more recently, just in the last few days, Sam Dastyari, a former MP, Labor MP, came out and said that Morrison's group came to the Labor Party to dig up dirt on one of the candidates who was pre-selected. So actually, Morrison was very unpopular in his local branch. He only got 8 votes to the other candidate's 80. And then the Murdoch media, they did a dirt campaign, a very vicious dirt campaign against the Liberal candidate, and he was ousted, and then Morrison got in. But at the end of the day, he wasn't actually popular in his own branch.
Thanks, Jeremy. There's a lot more on that. People can get it from the Australian Alert Service if they get a copy. Let's take a quick break.
We always liked to play chess together ever since we were little. He was always a better player than me. When I was diagnosed with Pompei's disease in 2002, I was told that my life expectancy was going to be poor, and my condition deteriorated rapidly before I was able to start treatment. My brother and I both suffered from the disease. But now I consider myself the fortunate one. My brother spent the last 2 years of his life in hospital. He didn't have access to this wonderful treatment that should be available to everybody. The world just keeps getting smaller as you progressively lose the ability to walk. So your world shrinks, and then gradually you realise, I haven't been to the supermarket in 6 months. I'm 59 now, and every year I can see my daughter grow up is a blessing. I believe my treatment's made this possible.
To learn more and help those living with Pompei's disease, register at australianpompey.com.
Hush, little baby, don't you cry. Daddy's gonna sing you a lullaby. When you're sleeping safe and sound, you've got the proudest dad in town. I remember when I first saw you, your heart beating as you grew. We'll read you stories to help you dream. Your mommy and I are a perfect team. I can't wait to hear you sing or watch as you put on a wedding ring. One day you'll have children too. Remember the times I sang to you.
We've all seen this one time or another. We may even have done it ourselves. But inhaling balloon gas is very dangerous and can be fatal. The helium in balloon gas acts as an asphyxiant, and when you inhale, it displaces the oxygen in your lungs. Balloon gas is safe in balloons and when you release it in a well-ventilated area and in a safe manner. So the next time you see some sucker about to inhale balloon gas, or you think it's going to be a laugh, stop and be gas-wise.
Welcome back to the CEC Report. Finally, prepare for a fake chemical attack in Syria as regime change fails. The purpose of this story, Jeremy, is Russia is warning again, and I'll emphasise again, that Islamist extremists in Syria, terrorists, are planning to orchestrate a chemical attack. Now, Russia warned this before the April 2018 attack and before the April 2017 attack. They've warned it both times. Those attacks have gone ahead. Syria was blamed, and Trump bombed Syria in the last time with Britain and France, right?
Yeah, it's very concerning.
But no experts have said this has made sense for 2 years, because for 2 years, Syria's been winning this war, right? There's no point in them doing something that's going to incur the wrath of the United States down on them. And even British generals were saying this, right? No one credible actually believed it. And then, of course, the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons went and tested the last site and said what was claimed just didn't happen. There's no proof of it there at all. So we're reporting Russia's warning because it is credible. And the most important point about it is regime change in Syria has failed. There's one little pocket left of extremists that there's a final cleanup job. And that's why this is, they're probably going to likely orchestrate this as a last gasp to try and revive regime change. And in that context, Jeremy, we want to remember the late US Senator John McCain. And why in that context is because he's one of the great champions of regime change in the world in the last couple of decades. And I'll preface it though, in our latest alert service here, we actually devote a page to John McCain, and the headline is Senator John McCain wanted to restore the Glass-Steagall Act. Here's why. So we had some common ground with this guy, right? He was one of the people in the US Congress that was for Glass-Steagall and has sponsored a bill that's in there. So we applaud him for that, but...
a big but.
A big but. His role in the destruction of the Middle East in the last 2 decades cannot be glossed over. I want to note it with a series of photos. The first one, this is Senator John McCain with his sidekick Senator Lindsey Graham. And the gentleman they're with is the boss of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group in Libya in 2011. Now, it was called the LIFG in Libya. It was otherwise known as Al-Qaeda. That guy's organisation flew 2 planes into the Twin Towers and killed 3,000 Americans. But when it came to overthrowing another country, John McCain was more than happy to get into bed with him. The second picture, this is John McCain with Islamist extremists in Syria. And there's a whole bunch of rogues in this particular picture. I'll point out some of the people sometimes get misidentified. So when you see this particular picture on the web, don't believe everything you see, because some of it's not proved. But the one that is proved is the man in the doorway, the short guy. At the time of this photo, his group was holding a heap of hostages that they'd kidnapped for ransom. Right? When this came out, John McCain was criticised in America, but he didn't mind. When it came, he was more than happy to sponsor extremists if he wanted regime change in a country. And that time the target was Syria, and that one has failed, John McCain. So he has died knowing it's failed. Final one is, this is John McCain in Ukraine in 2014 with Oleg Tyahnybuk of Svoboda, the leading neo-Nazi in Ukraine. And that's who he was happy to ally with to overthrow the Ukrainian government because of his bitter hatred of everything Russian. So that's John McCain. That's what we have to say about him. That's all we have time, Jeremy. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Robbie.
Thanks for tuning in. Tune in next week for more.
Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed.video, a different sort of TV.
Hey Sarah, I'm going to order some pathology tests to see how everything's going.
Half the Australian population had a pathology test last year. That's you or someone you love. 100 tests are performed every minute, delivering vital medical information. From the moment you are born, your healthcare depends on pathology tests. 70% of medical decisions rely on information from pathology tests. Pathology is the engine room of healthcare. One small sample can reveal millions of insights all about you. Pathologists are your doctor's doctor. 25,000 people work to provide doctors with the answers they need to treat you. Australian pathology is world class. We may never meet you, but we see each of you as part of our family. Every minute, 23 Australians find out more about their health.
Good news, Sarah. The results show that everything's okay.
Pathology provides peace of mind.
I rely on Australian pathology.
Sign up online to support Australian pathology.
They say there's a chance I could die in a car crash. Maybe even from heart disease. Maybe even skin cancer.
I could die in a work-related accident, or I could die in a fight.
The fact is, the biggest cause of death for men in my age group is suicide.
Please don't let this happen to me.
You can do something. Lifeline believes that suicide is mostly preventable. Help us save lives. Find out what you can do at lifeline.org.au.
MELfeed Video is about to close operations for tonight, but we'll be back with you next Monday evening. In the meantime, here is a selection of programs that will be seen on our next scheduled web stream. You're welcome to visit our website at MELfeed.video for further details of this project. Until next time, from all of us here at MELfeed Video, we wish you a very good night.